The pair raced home with romantic hopes sparkling, but in a heartbeat, some frenzied figure tore onto the scene, dashing past at a speed that rivaled a soaring bullet train. He streaked by the car with surreal ease, leaving every bystander enveloped in a cloud of dust. Folks were dumbstruck, gaping as a man zipped down the roadway, evoking memories of Sonic as he vanished into the urban night. Soon, the authorities raised a barricade and finally managed to bring the havoc to a stop. When one officer aimed and launched a taser, the mysterious runner casually plucked the wires right out of the air between his fingers. Even after taking a full charge from the stun gun, the wild-haired runner unleashed a retaliatory force, propelling everyone backward, prompting the arrival of elite units. Helicopters whirred and tanks rolled in as if the city's alert had hit the highest tier, reminiscent of raising your wanted level in GTA San Andreas. All this chaos sparked by a single man clad in a hospital gown. Not content with impossible speed, he began scaling buildings, and at the summit, surrounded by whirling helicopters and rifles poised on adjacent rooftops, he tore away his gown, clutched a broomstick, and declared his challenge to them all. I know this paints a baffling picture in your mind. You wonder, what sort of person could possibly do this? That man's name is Ray Yugim, a stranger to our era. A millennium gone, he was a relentless combatant, once fending off 300 assassins for 4 days and nights, shielding his beloved with his very flesh. At the last, he clashed with his arch-rival, Awakens, and the two of them plunged from a cliff together, disappearing into icy waters below. Now, people saw a colossal shard of ice drifting along the ocean currents, holding within not some fabled Captain America but a genuine curiosity. There, perfectly unharmed after 1,000 cycles, lay our hero. Authorities seized the chance, seeking to treat him like some test subject, but he slipped through their grasp, and that wild pursuit you witnessed, that's how it all began. President Kang Ji-kwan of South Korea chose to brave the front lines personally. He commanded his forces to lower their weapons, then introduced himself as the nation's chief. He calmly explained that they now lived in the future, offering his hand in greeting. Ryu swung that broom handle within a hair of the president's face, to confirm whether this was deception or tangible truth. The president came awfully close to an ungraceful launch skyward, and something more embarrassing. In earlier days there had been Union, a woman famed for mastery over mental assaults. Suspecting himself ensnared in a cunning illusion, Ryu only relented once reality set in. They sat together at the president's covert estate while the kitchen prepared a grand banquet in Ray Yugim's honor. During their discussion, the president clarified how advanced medicine had safely thawed him from centuries of deep freeze. He sought but a single request for all the nation's hospitality: Ray Yugim's cooperation in navigating these unfamiliar times. The state aspired to uncover the secret behind this man's miraculous survival, hoping the findings might someday uplift all mankind. For the sake of peace, the president spun a public tale, insisting that everything — the titanic piece of ice, the rooftop chaos, mad sprints — had simply been scenes from a film, nothing more than movie magic. All of this just to keep concealed the reality about the man locked in ice. Any nation would stoop to terrible acts if it meant wielding such extraordinary power. Unwilling to become anyone's experiment, the man calmly declines and departs. The guards attempt to restrain him as soldiers unleash tranquilizer darts straight into his back, but Ray Yugim is always ahead of them. He wraps himself in a shroud of energy, making him untouchable to anything trying to harm him. With an overwhelming display of might, he propels everyone nearby away from him. The president can only stand there, stunned, witnessing this unstoppable force. More guards swarm in, sealing every passage to escape. When one officer launches an attack from behind, he's convinced he struck a blow, but the man before him simply dissolves into mist and slips effortlessly through their ranks, eluding every attack with uncanny ease. Neither the security team nor the president has any inkling of what just took place. No one can explain it, but he stands quite visibly atop the city's loftiest structure. It appears that Choku Jiam intends to leap, perhaps to bring his days to an end. This world offers him nothing. Deprived of purpose, his existence feels hollow. Living was only ever meaningful as his lady's protector, but now, with no mistress nor adversary, he drifts without direction. He finds no reason to persist. He sometimes wishes that the fall from that distant cliff had taken his life, Yet as he begins to drop, something suddenly seizes his attention. A face illuminated on a billboard freezes him mid-act. It looks just like Aken, the foe he fought last. Chokujo's eyes grow wide, his memories rushing back to that clash with Aken, the being who ensnared his kin in an illusion and forced them to destroy one another before his eyes. Banhai and Aken allied their forces to rain ruin on Goryo. Back then, the devoted bodyguard met that menace with unwavering resolve, as Aken took pleasure in inflicting pain and pledged the world's ruin. For Chu, that individual seeded all his misery. He was certain he'd felled him in their last encounter, but impossibly the villain seems present in this era. That upheaves Ryuji's entire interpretation of reality. If his adversary endures, then so does his reason for being. He stretches his arms toward the earth, emits a tremendous surge, slows his descent, and arrives squarely on his feet. Much remains shrouded in uncertainty for him, and now a steadfast resolve takes hold to seek the truth. Within the Blue House, President Jakun nearly loses composure at the news that the ancient guardian has hurled himself from the tallest tower nearby. What worries him even more is that the body was never found. Thankfully, a witness came forward to describe a subsequent encounter, explaining that the visitor inquired solely about Yan Wu. In these lands, Yang Wu is a luminous figure, one of Korea's greatest icons, celebrated internationally from youth for both artistry and charisma. Observed closely beyond borders, he captivates by his alluring presence and innate talent. His mere affiliation uplifts the company he stands by and serves as a point of pride for Korea's global reputation. To summarize, many admire him as an ideal man, a notion contrary to all Ryuji had prepared to learn. Instead, Ryuji is left more uneasy, since Okien's supposed persona starkly contrasts with the enemy living in his memories. Thus, Ryujiam contemplates two distinct paths. Either this famous figure merely resembles Okien, or he is indeed the man himself, having deceived an entire world. Curiously, Ryujiam yearns for the latter, wishing it true. Eager for answers, he asks a boy to bring him to Yan Wu at once. To a typical child, such a request borders on madness. There's no chance he could just stroll up to a star. The boy only gapes, his mind racing. This fellow must be out of his mind. The situation grows still more dire. Ryu Jiang, his forbearance worn down, releases such immense energy that every monitor shatters in a brilliance of sparks. Demanding directions to Yang Wu, he terrifies the boy, who stammers that the star departed for foreign lands years ago. Ryu Jai then understands his quarry is no longer nearby. Thus, our scene shifts to America. At that very moment, the model eats lunch, when a titanic stranger strikes his face, sending him reeling. Bellowing in English, the man orders him to leave, but the confrontation is all part of an on-screen production, no real danger involved. The director, frustration mounting, finds Yun Woo's recent performance lacking and it's hindering progress. Wanting to make amends, Yun Woo, sporting a puffy face already, asks his fellow actor to hit his other cheek for a better shot. At that instant, a chandelier trembles loose. Without warning, it plunges, set to endanger the giant actor's very life should it land upon him. Yun Woo lunges in just soon enough, rescuing the actor from harm. Crew members hurry over, their hearts pounding. It was an accident not one of them foresaw. Fortune smiles, for both men stand alive and unharmed, at least one of them. But fate deals Yun Woo a crueler hand. His arm bears the brunt of the blow. When friends see his injury at the hospital, they are astounded that he risked himself so fully to shield another. Floods of gifts pour in, honoring his courageous deed, yet Yun Woo's heart bids him share each offering with hospital staff. With characteristic grace, he apologizes for stalling production, though relief eclipses all other feelings. The wound could have been far worse. However, upon hearing startling tidings, Yun Woo begins to realize that completing the film is suddenly of little consequence. Back at the Blue House, President John bids farewell to his companions, only to discover the ancient warrior quietly awaiting him. After slipping past the sharpest security with astonishing grace, John still feels stunned, remembering how, just 9 hours before, the same mysterious figure appeared in his office seemingly out of emptiness. This encounter, though, is meant for acceptance. He now agrees to the partnership he previously refused. But not without terms, he places forth a photograph of Yan Wu, requesting the president to find someone trustworthy enough to bring him face to face with the star. John consents to this request, providing there is complete mutual cooperation as a result. Though handshakes weren't marks of trust in days long vanished, Ray Yugim accepts the president's outstretched palm regardless. In current time, John learns of Ray Yugim's urgent desire to meet Yong-woo. Given the immense distance, such a meeting appears daunting. Nonetheless, they successfully reach the place where Yun-woo resides. The model gapes wide-eyed as the president arrives, his companion at his side. With civility, Yun-woo introduces himself, while Ryo Jae waits in taut anticipation, yearning to uncover whether this is truly Akayom. Khan comments that Yong-woo has recently injured his arm and Ryo Jae steps forward, extending his hand in greeting. The star is taken aback to realize this is the same man from the headlines, standing here in person. They exchange a handshake before John suggests they move somewhere more inviting, though what truly matters comes next. Ryo grips Yun-woo's hand with an overwhelming intensity. To his astonishment, there is no trace of Kai. Yun-woo seems utterly mortal. Feeling let down, Ryo offers an apology for intruding. John encourages everyone to settle in while he excuses himself under the guise of needing the restroom, though that is merely a pretense. His guards are already posted nearby, prepared for anything that might occur. After a while, the room clears, leaving only the pair seated alone at the table. Though there's tea before him, Ryo feels completely overwhelmed. He recognizes that this man merely mirrors Okian's appearance. Perhaps he truly is isolated in this world. Abruptly, Yun-woo addresses Ryo by name and leans in to quietly express his shock at finding Ryo alive. Yun-woo is incredulous. He never imagined the bodyguard presumed dead would appear before him. Ryo nearly lashes out there and then, letting out a hostile aura as a threat. He demands an explanation. Is all of this some sort of charade? Was Yun-woo only a mask for Akin all along? If so, it means Okiongo has discovered how to conceal his Kai. Ryo cannot help but wonder how Okiongo navigated his way to this present. With serene composure, Okiong remarks that to end him here is meaningless, urging Ryo to dismiss his murderous intent. He brings up that Ryo remains an outsider, still finding his footing in this world, while Okiong himself has already adapted. Ryo pushes for details about his journey to the future, but Okium withholds the answer. Next, Ryo asks about the one he cherishes most, the girl he'd sworn to protect. Did she travel to the future as well? Instead of granting clarity, Okian chooses to taunt, replying cryptically. Irritated, Ryo slams his palm down, flipping Okian and his chair backward with force. Seeing that Okian has no intention of being honest, Ryuji resolves to search for answers on his own. He looks down at Okian as the man rises amidst the broken furniture, memories of their former lives flickering in his gaze. But Ryo's recent outburst only emboldens Akin, who senses that Ryo Yugim hasn't regained his former strength. Just as combat threatens to flare, Akin gives a warning about the surrounding illusion barrier. To any observer, it will merely appear as if two long-lost acquaintances are reconnecting, not creating chaos. Akin launches forward, but Yugim instantly senses something off, realizing he's not actually dueling Akon. He crushes a pine cone in his grip and declares his intent to unearth reality himself. He reveals that although his adversary masked their Kai earlier, a brief leak during his attack provided enough evidence. This was no Okian. The imitation Yun-woo drops her facade, shifting back into a woman's form. She marvels that he discovered her ruse after merely one encounter. Her true identity is Uni. The narrative flashes back to the rebellion's last day. Ryo vividly recalled seeing Uni fall from a blade and assumed she'd perished, making her presence now wholly baffling. Yun-woo lets out a soft, almost mocking laugh at his perplexity and remarks that the genuine Akong now commands a position of considerable significance in this world. She had simply borrowed Yun-woo's face since her master was preoccupied with various important engagements. Now, filled with anticipation, she is eager to be the one to announce Ryo's return to Okiong. After measuring his might, she decides claiming victory should be simple. Summoning several doppelgangers, she unleashes them in a unified assault. Unfortunately for her, Ryu effortlessly dispatches one. His patience snapped, he curtly commands her to hold her tongue. Even so, he's drained an enormous quantity of Kai, and with his powers so newly awoken, that should exhaust his limits. Yet herein lies Yuning's misjudgment. Ryu is no average fighter. With a singular blow, he sweeps away all her carbon copies. Now, she lies defeated on the cold ground, lacking the strength to even stand against him. Ray Yugim remembers believing he'd killed her. She plummeted from a precipice with a mortal wound, so finding her alive now strains credulity. Yuning confesses that she too was convinced her end had come on that day. But when her eyes blinked open again, she discovered herself not in death but in the future. There, she was greeted by a silver-haired man impeccably suited, the figure of Okayun Jurt, already ready to assist her adjustment to this era. This means that Okayun was the first to reawaken. And true to her loyalty, Yun stubbornly refuses surrender. She comes maddeningly close to Ryu's face with a quick lethal jab, but he intercepts the attack, repelling her in a forceful blast. Barely conscious, Yuning tries to resist as Ryu advances, telling her it's pitiful if she really believes Okian truly rescued her. She protests that she has only existed here for a single month, but Ryu seems caught on something else. When did her flesh begin to deteriorate? Demanding a reason she cannot provide, he harshly tears open her clothing to reveal the decay beneath. Ryu explains bluntly that Okian did not save her life. Instead, he cast a spell only to prolong her existence slightly, ready to discard her once she lost usefulness. Furious, Yun shouts back, accusing him of spouting utter lies. Ray Yugim realizes this technique is utterly foreign to her, yet to him, its truth could not be clearer. She is merely another disposable instrument in Okian's service. He frankly says the only reason she can perform these trivial missions is because, to them, that is the entirety of her value, a painful truth for Yuning. She is terror-struck at the prospect of dying soon, but Ray Yugim discloses there is but a single chance for her salvation, a way known only to him. To rescue her, he must employ a separate branch of Kai, demonstrating this by flooding her with his energy to stave off the decay. This realization shores up Yuning's worst fears. Her master's intention all along was to discard her. Ryugim tells her only he and Okian possess the skill for this art. Confronted with this truth, a choice forced upon her, she must now decide her allegiance. With all other routes vanished, Yuning melancholy admits her wish to go on living, quietly asking Ryu how she should serve. He instructs her to become a spy for both sides. Moments later, Yunwoo charges out the entrance, pleading for someone to rescue her from Ryuim. She warns the president and urges a swift escape, leaving everyone baffled by the chaos. A wave of dread strikes the president as he contemplates a perilous man infiltrating their midst, leaving him to anxiously speculate about what could have transpired. Upon entering, they are greeted by Ray Yugim in a chamber reduced to ruin, its contents completely torn apart. Offering his apologies for the destruction, he assures them he'll find a way to make amends. He claims he was conducting an experiment, but the president sets this aside, questioning instead if Ryu's state of mind is intact. Concerned for Yuning as well, they inquire about Yuning's safety. Even though Yuning is irritated by Ryu's wild antics witnessed by everyone, it's clear Ryu's performance is truly convincing. Nevertheless, he intends to revisit Yuning soon to discuss the pressing matter of Okian's situation. The narrative drifts backwards to the days when the youthful swordsman first learned what he was meant for. His sole purpose, to unsheath his blade for the defense of those dear to him. Bodyguards existed to shield their charges, even if it meant sacrificing their lives, always reminded their own well-being was of lesser consequence. Still, because they lived on behalf of another, their spirits were fierce and they never yielded easily to death. Yugim opens his eyes in the laboratory, and when the researchers spot the sudden decline in his condition, they immediately go on high alert. He insists he's all right and inquires about how much longer the study will continue, though the president urges him to rest and postpone things if necessary. Ryug consents to suspend the research for the time being, for he remembers a promise too important to neglect. In the following scene, Yun Zio greets Ryu, remarking that he arrived even later than her expectations. She detects someone tailing him, but isn't bothered once she discerns it's a member of the president's security detail. They settle in for a meal, and Yun raises her eyebrows as he nonchalantly orders a stream of drinks to her account. Ryu Gam instructs her to remain silent as he will be directing the questions. He begins by recalling Okian's backstory and the deception that occurred during their concluding battle. Okin was kin to the family Ray Yugim had sworn to protect. While all assumed him lost to a tragic event, he in truth orchestrated his disappearance to plot an insurrection. Yun confesses that Okian had a penchant for secrecy, she merely followed his directives. With little else she can clarify, Yugim wonders if anyone else from bygone days managed to reach the present. To her knowledge, only Yuna, Okian and Ryu remain. Despite combing the archives for others, no further names surfaced. Ray Yugim is then informed that Okin is currently abroad. Yuna objects to the notion of him facing Okin in his current form, not least because Okin's strength has undeniably grown. Just as she voices her concern, Ray Yugim abruptly interrupts, not out of weariness but because something unexpected has caught his attention. Standing outside the window, staring in, is the true Yan Wu, none other than Okin in the flesh. A knowing smile creeps across Okin's lips, for he senses the circumstances just became far more compelling. Yugim rises and declares that there is no further point to this discussion. Following that, he asserts that her involvement will require tighter boundaries. Laying eyes on that man awakens something vital within Yugim, reminding him how preoccupied with vengeance he was, neglecting what was truly significant. He tells Yuning with renewed certainty that the girl entrusted to his protection yet lives. To Yuni, the idea seems unbelievable, especially after all the painstaking research she had already completed. Yet his master's charge reverberates through his thoughts. His sole role is to shield the person entrusted to his guardianship. Above all else, he resolves that finding his mistress comes first. Yuni cautions him that such a feat will be nearly impossible if he cannot recall her visage. But something is unique about him. After taking up a pencil, he tries carefully capturing her from recollection, every subtle trait included. With years of loyal service, he assumes the task will be straightforward until he presents the illustration. And predictably, the attempt is dreadful. The narrative then transitions to Soon. Her companion fumes at being left behind. She's also the one who, at the beginning, contemplated leaving this world. Within the school walls, Soon is a star. She's surrounded by a fan club overflowing with hopeful admirers convinced they stand a chance. Because of their obsession, her friend grows concerned. Alongside that worry, there is a faint envy at the adoration that Soon effortlessly attracts. During their conversation, Ray Yugim and Yun spot the two friends from a distance. Yuning is still in awe of smartphones, marveling at what an endless sea of knowledge they contain. Ryugim is relieved to see progress. He'd thought this milestone would take a year to achieve. He instructs Yuning to stay silent since their goal is just to quietly observe. Suddenly, a gang of unpleasant guys encircles the girls. Their desperation for Soon's notice turns threatening as they insist she owes them a hug. Surrounded, Soon's fear grows while her pushy admirers behave as though their fandom entitles them to her affection. Ryu and Yuning continue to watch from afar, realizing intervention will soon be necessary. Next, we uncover more about his mistress. Her first comparison is to a dandelion due to her innocence. Petite, gentle, always in tears, these are his first memories of her. Despite her privileged upbringing, sickness would often bring her dangerously low. She was someone who truly needed protecting. Ryu Jane steps in just as one of the men attempts to seize Soon. Yuning keeps vigil over Soon's companion. Surprisingly, if you believed Sun was Ray Gorham's mistress, you'd be mistaken. It's actually the friend. What's more, she's never been frail, neither then nor now. She was his mistress? Ryugu walks to her and she meets his approach. He expresses regret for not arriving sooner to safeguard her, then gently offers his coat for warmth. Upon meeting her gaze, Ryu feels certain it's her, until with unexpected swiftness she lunges forward and delivers a forceful uppercut to his stomach. Ray Yugim never could have anticipated such a response, and truth be told, nor could I. She is certainly no damsel in need, rather danger radiates from her. With a sly grin she notes, "It's been ages." Evidently, she mistook him for another eager supporter. That shatters his heart, for she has no recollection of him. She no longer even carries the same name. Confused, the girl inquires if he actually follows Soon as a devotee instead. Rome is taken aback. Not only do her memories diverge, but everything about her seems unfamiliar. Her essence now appears entirely altered. Standing before him, she feels like a complete stranger. She bows her head, sheepish for striking him so rashly as other students hurry over, thinking Ray Yugim posed a threat to Soon and her best friend. Nevertheless, none of that holds his attention now. He cannot shake the heartache of realizing this girl doesn't remember being his mistress. The crowd moves on with Soon while her friend cannot forget the sorrow etched on the man left standing alone. From that short encounter, she senses depths of pain beneath the surface of his life story. 18 The following dawn, Ray Yugim and Yuning journey to the burial place said to hold his lady's remains. Yuning reflects on its simplicity, yet assumes it's merely the result of so much time having slipped by. They cross-check every detail with the president's chief historian. Through examining multiple accounts, they discover the Lady of Ray Yugim lost her life on the uprising's very day. Her last possessions found their resting place within the crypt. Yuning manages to keep collected while Ray Yugim is shattered. Overwhelmed, he even slams his fist into the earth out of grief. Torturous memories of those final moments haunt him again and again. Okian prevailed by severing him from the single quest he cherished. He went against the guiding rule of his existence and was defeated in his life's ultimate calling. Facing her burial place, he is weighed down by guilt, haunted by the sense of betraying her trust. It's devastating, a life dedicated wholly to a cause, only to realize in the end it was all for naught. Now that the truth of her passing is certain, their thoughts shift to the girl encountered before, the one whose face is the mirror of his former teacher. Meanwhile, at the academy, the girl is astonished to find herself the sole staff member remaining. Her intoxicated employer lounges about, lost in abject despair. This careless man even instructs her to make him something akin to Ramuin. That, after all, is simply another part of her tasks. She's frustrated to be saddled with chores when she's meant for stardom. Irritated by her protest, at last he rises to prepare the meal himself. Her televised interview is airing and he urges her to be patient just a bit longer. A phone buzzes, joy animates his demeanor at once. Finishing the call, he announces to Mariel the uplifting news: she's secured a meeting with a prestigious drama company. At once, Dariel's face is alight with hope. Surely, this could be the opportunity she has long awaited. Since they were invited, Dariel attends, but the venue unsettles her. It seems unsuited to a girl of her years. Yet she dismisses the oddness, attributing it to common company bureaucracy. When the men there offer her a drink, she's startled. She points out she's under the drinking age and refuses. The atmosphere is nothing like a real interview. The room is disordered, lacking professionalism, and the men behave drunkenly and strangely. They murmur for her to relax. This is merely an initial introduction, not the true appointment. She does her best to play along, but immediately pulls away when one of the men dares lay a hand on her. Clarity strikes, she's in immediate jeopardy. In that heartbeat, she grasps what awaits, stands tall, and declares she will never trade her dignity, not for any price, not even entire buildings. Nonetheless, it is futile. For moments later she collapses. The drink, laced secretly, overwhelms her after 20 minutes. Lying helpless, the reality dawns. They deceived her by dosing her water. As for Shadok, desperation has taken such hold that he's now capable of anything. With Dulua out cold, one of the men suggests they should use her dreams to benefit themselves. Their chief makes a call, and the team gives a reassuring update that all is under control. Meanwhile, at President Jonius's residence, Ryu gazes at the moon, declaring that vengeance is now his sole purpose. His intention is to erase everything Okian created and dismantle it all, making sure that the memory of both fades away forever this time. Well into the night, Uni suddenly arrives, surprising him. We discover that he has been granting her Hisky daily. Uni's visit is prompted by something significant she uncovered. It doesn't concern Okian, but rather a girl who resembled the woman Ryu cherished. With her curiosity sparked by Dula, Uni delved into the girl's origins. What she unearthed is downright astounding. The girl, like Ryugu's beloved, belongs to the Min family and is a direct offspring of the very one he once failed to save. After monitoring the girl for a time, Yunshai realized she's in danger and requires assistance. Yet Ryuguam feels no concern for any descendant. He simply turns away and returns indoors as she is not his master in his eyes. Frustrated by all her effort, Yunshai becomes exasperated. Suddenly, a phone rings, prompting her to act quickly. A part of her reasons that if Ryuga has no feelings, he ought to let the girl be. Left alone with his thoughts, the shattered man recalls the one he held most dear. He remembers all her varied looks right up until the revolution began. When he sensed peril looming over his lady, he urged her to flee, yet she made one final request. All she wished for was that he would be there when she looked back for him. Memories mingle and he is torn between Dula and his lost master, repeating to himself that the girl is not her and that Dula should mean nothing, so why should he care? He also reasons that surely someone else is safeguarding her now. Our scene shifts to the YouTube channel as Nami welcomes Biku as the newest candidate eager to become a manager. Bayu is caught off guard when he's hired immediately, no questions asked. Not a single interview. Bayu isn't bothered by Boo's newcomer status, promptly sending him on his way. Then it dawns on him. After the duel, Boo remains the sole employee. He readies a surprise for her, wondering about her earlier encounter. A call from his superior sets off the white-haired man in a fit. He was absent briefly, but during his short trip to the restroom, chaos erupted and their target escaped. His foolish subordinate attempted to grab her and suffered a thorough beating in return. Now that the girl has run, her testifying could bring the law down upon them. Still, the bull-cut fellow notes she couldn't have traveled far since the drugs are still taking their toll, and he's correct. Dula can hardly lift her limbs now, teetering against the wall for support as she pushes herself forward. To make matters worse, she left her phone behind in the room, so reaching out to the police isn't even possible. She is barely aware of her position in the corridor when the men charge after her. She silently implores her legs to carry her a little further, knowing escape depends on it. Just as she manages to grasp the door handle, the men catch up and hurl her back. The man with the bowl haircut meaning her harm pauses, seeing how fragile she's already become. Even they seem astonished she lasted this long. No longer hesitating, they decide simply to haul her away. But then the floor quivers and soon the entire building bucks and groans. Recognizing a powerful earthquake, Dula senses opportunity. Darkness sweeps over as the lights die, and in that gloom she finds the door stands open as well. That's all thanks to the arrival of our young hero within the building. Meanwhile, back at the president's residence, he came upon a note left by Kondosha, but remains uncertain about his own reasons for journeying so far to rescue her. There was nothing stopping him from turning away from the girl, yet even now he doesn't fully comprehend what drove him here. Ultimately, Ryujima comes to the straightforward conclusion he acted simply out of a desire to do something good. He addresses the men with icy resolve. Release her right now. The pallid-haired assailant goes rigid, overcome with dread, baffled by the stranger's arrival. Even as tremors rattle the floor, Ryuja effortlessly tosses him, the man ricocheting into furniture before tumbling to the ground. Next, Ryu locks a steely gaze on the bowl-haired aggressor, demanding he free the girl. Rage surges strangely within Ryu, even he can't quite explain it. The bowl-cut thug makes a hasty retreat, fleeing at full speed once he glimpses the fate of his companion. He dashes for his car, desperate to flee, but Ray Yugim blocks his way. "No one said you could go," he reminds the scoundrel. The thug crawls from the vehicle while Ryu sternly demands to know what they've done to render the girl unconscious. For a brief moment, he toys with the notion of ending the man's life entirely if he refuses to cooperate. Once more, he questions if the girl was poisoned before effortlessly hurling the car aside with sheer force. Ryugim declares he wants an antidote if one exists. The thug manages to stutter that she was only drugged and will recover, but Ryugim remains unconvinced, crushing his assailant's hand in retaliation. He further warns that should the truth be twisted, the man's throat could be next. The bowl-cut thug reels, confusion apparent, just as an ensemble dressed like state agents arrives to intervene. Instead, this group proves to be a security squad. Urging him to scatter while Ryu tends to the girl, their captain insists they must assume guardianship of the child. They introduce themselves not at all, pressing Ryu to surrender the girl or else force will follow. Ray Yugim stands ready and challenges them, daring them to make an attempt. Thinking back to their first encounter and his recent rescue, Ryujim comes to the conclusion he's best suited to look after her. He claims the title of her manager, regardless of it being only a single day in that role. The bowl-haired henchman phones his employer, discovering it was his own superior who dispatched the security detail in case events unraveled. But when the informant relays the news about encountering Duel's manager, his boss is truly taken aback. Meanwhile, with Ray Yugim and the guards, they insist on seeing proof that he genuinely has ties to the girl. Ray Yugim instead demands they demonstrate their own trustworthiness before he would ever consider giving up Dula. To his mind, these individuals are far too dubious, and not a shred of trust exists between them. When one tries to make a move toward him, Ryujim swiftly plants a foot in the man's gut, then ends it with a sharp palm blow, sending his foe flying. Having bested him, Ray Yugim briefly wonders if perhaps he went too far. The leader drops his act and signals for all to attack. It does no good. Ray Yugim sweeps through them, toppling one after another until only he remains upright. As Ray Yugim moves to breeze past the battered group, something unforeseen tugs at his awareness. The captain readies himself for a direct duel, and finally the girl emerges from unconsciousness. With no recognition for any security staff, she's told by him to close her eyes and gathers herself while he amasses energy for an overwhelming assault. In an instant, Ray Yugim lets loose, sending the entire squad tumbling away as if they were a cluster of bowling pins struck by a violent storm. Awestruck, the girl can only gasp at his overwhelming might. Soon after, we see her safely return to her employer, who quickly realizes his grave error in allowing her to go unguarded. He had never foreseen such a turn of events, taking the company's illustrious reputation for granted. Though outwardly unharmed, there's no hiding that she has been badly rattled by the ordeal. What at first promised opportunity nearly turned into disaster for Duel. The boss seethes, declaring they ought to seek out those who did this, but she cautions him against such folly. Challenging such a large company is beyond his means. She too yearns for justice but knows their limits. The harsh reality is, right now they have no strength to fight openly. Screaming their indignation would achieve nothing. For this reason, she advises him not to throw himself senselessly into conflict, preferring instead a slow, eventual retribution. At present, she insists the greatest priority is to thank the rescuer who made their safety possible. She tugs her employer over to a nonchalant Ray Yugim, relinquishing the conversation to his lead. Although keen to reward his brave actions, Ryujim seems only interested if the compensation involves delicious beverages. The girl already feels drawn to him. The combination of strength and coolness might make him an ideal manager in her eyes. They've crossed paths before. Teasingly, she wonders if the girl he mistook her for could match her own charm. Shifting focus, her boss treats it like a sudden interview and soon learns Ray Yugim is more or less without a current job. Dula is taken aback by how things are unfolding, but to the boss, the pair seem ideally matched. He offers Ray Yugim the manager's position on the spot. Sometime after, Dula receives applause from Sihan for her involvement with such a renowned agency. But clueless to what truly occurred, Dula admits the entire deal slipped through her fingers. Growing faint, she slips aside and sheepishly inquires about a favor. A few industry secrets, perhaps. Though this personal question gives Siyun a brief pause, her gentle nature wins out and she agrees at once. She's just about to reply when a pack of unruly girls stalls their path, pushing them to the sidelines. This bunch is recognized as the infamous Gaeun Neil group. Still, Siyun's own guards are intimidating enough to send the troublemakers running. Before any escalation, Zion comments that incidents like these prove the worth of having a manager around. In her opinion, someone's reliability far outweighs their physical strength. That word, reliable, lingers in Dula's thoughts, bringing to mind the man she'd just encountered. Later that evening, Ray Yugim gazes over the bustling city when Uni arrives dutifully to see him. His words are sharp, chastising her constant tardiness and questioning just what commitments keep her running behind. Declining to respond, Uni instead demands to know what made him summon her here. His only interest is learning the tasks performed by a celebrity manager, which seems to genuinely surprise her. Under his piercing gaze, she outlines that a manager checks on the celebrity, negotiates agreements, and acts as a sort of caretaker. With her job explained now, she turns the question back, curious about his reasons for asking. Ray Yugim reveals he recently accepted a role as Mindjula's new manager, which takes her aback, especially since he'd refused earlier. She swears under her breath over his change of heart, insisting she predicted this outcome. To add to it all, he picks up a curious detail from her. Elsewhere, a member of the emergency unit confesses the mission's failure to his superior, admitting that mysterious stranger was the real reason behind it. Simultaneously, Ray Yugim confides in Manhwa, recounting how he battled several opponents to rescue the girl. Right away, he sensed there was something off about them. Even loaded with cheats, they'd stand up again. Their leader goes on to deliver such a forceful punch to his own subordinate that he sends him crashing into the wall, making it clear there's nothing ordinary about any of them. Failing an assignment of such consequence is nothing short of a disgrace. Ray Yugim tells Uno that the presence of Kai ought to be completely unknown in this world. Martial arts shouldn't exist here. Yet still, he could sense energy coursing from those men. Now, the leader of that unit is intrigued as well and hopes to encounter this enigmatic figure personally. Unhuri reacts intensely to Ryugu's claim. She presses him for certainty while his confusion only grows. She must be hiding knowledge he lacks. Unhurio's eyes enlarge with shock, her memory instantly triggered by Awakens' assertion that internal Kai had vanished. If that's truly the case, such things should be impossible, providing further proof that Awakens misled her for their own ends. That revelation draws her mind back to when she faced today's Awakens. During their encounter, she discovered the world had transformed dramatically over the past 8 centuries. Humans had been deprived of one of their core abilities, so society came to value technological progress instead of martial prowess. He even commended the advancement of science. For him, Kai no longer had any place in this new era. However, that only serves to deepen the mystery of Unryo enduring for so long. According to Rhea, what he detected wasn't just normal Kai, meaning his hunch could still be mistaken. This explains his intention to investigate those individuals first. In the next instant, he leaps from the rooftop right before her eyes. He hits the pavement with force and vanishes into the night's shadows, determined to seek out the answers hidden within darkness. The following morning transports us to Korea's most prestigious academy. Yongjin High, supported by state authorities, operates more like a university with an abundance of diverse classes and opportunities. This is where Dulu attends. It's crowded with pampered, affluent teens such as the infamous triad of mean girls. Dula, on the other hand, managed entry through a twist of fate, which makes her a prime target for harassment simply because she's present. They even draw Shuan into their schemes, dismissively pretending she barely merits attention. Dula counters So Shuing's snark, but although she's tempted to lash out, the boys amplify the torment instead. The entire classroom stands in opposition, leaving Dula without an escape. Still, whispers fill the air. Everyone is curious about the newcomer arriving today. The instructor strides in, urging everyone to take their seats. Given the teacher's reputation for excellence, students automatically assume the new arrival is female, but then Choki appears, stunning them all and especially Dula with his striking appearance in the uniform. Let's pause and revisit what happened during Choki's audience with the Academy's president. There, he requested admission, his reason stating he wished to better understand life in this realm. The president delegated the choice to the director of the National Intelligence Service. His eligibility now only hinged on his age, so with that cleared, he entered the class, instantly drawing enamored looks from the girls, while even the boys wondered if he was some performer destined for fame. Amongst the gossip, Dula steps up, introduces himself, and remarks about Ryu's physique. The response is chilly. Ryu claims his strength is the result of taking down adversaries. In essence, defeating foes decisively. The awkward classmate who earlier relayed information about Yunyu sits shaking, while Junyu snickers, comparing Ray Yugim's words to those out of a comic protagonist's mouth. The nervous kid looks scared that Ryu might truly bring chaos upon the entire school. Ryu's gaze meets Dula's, catching her silently. She motions for a private conversation outside, and he complies as she presses him for an explanation about his presence at the academy. She's shocked by how effortlessly he was admitted and probes to discover his real identity. But even before his entrance into the school, Ray Yugim had been cautioned against revealing too much. With careful preparation for lines of inquiry like this, he delivers a ready-made response. He explains that a special recommendation earned him his place and adds that he's assigned as her manager, a personal guardian, essentially. Since she's being targeted by dangerous folk, his duty is to protect her, even if that makes her uneasy. She warns him to keep distance on school grounds lest their arrangement gets them in trouble, insisting they pretend to be no more than strangers in public. A part of her still clings to denial, as she fails to truly perceive herself as a star. Rattled by their encounter, she finds him already vanished, an echo of the caped hero's trademark departure. Somewhere else, a group of tormentors is squeezing a timid student for his lunch money. When he refuses to give in, one of them lands a harsh blow to his stomach as punishment. The forceful punch brings him to his knees. A figure known as General tyrannizes the class, instilling fear in everyone. As Ray Yugim approaches, curiosity fills his mind, 32 minutes wondering what unfolds before him. The explanation for his earlier disappearance is straightforward. He detected a faint whisper of Kai nearby. Now Janel has forced the young victim to kneel and is confiscating his money. The frail boy reveals that Jenny imposes a tribute on all classmates. With a formidable family offering their support, he treats his peers as his personal domain. To describe himself, he chooses the word king, and hearing this ignites fury in Ryuim's heart. He's appalled that someone so unremarkable would dare take that title upon himself. Yet Jenny and her loyal followers catch every syllable uttered. With imperturbable calm, Ryujim expresses regret for offending the so-called monarch, prompting Janiel to view it as a threat to his status. One of Janiel's henchmen assumes he can handle Ryujim single-handedly. However, Janel dismisses the brute aside, thrusts his chin forward, challenging Ryujim to retaliate. Foolishness! He glares, irritated by Ryuim's continued defiance. Jan cocks his fist back, while the timid child cannot believe this unfolds on the transfer student's first day. A moment before things escalate, the teacher arrives and spoils Jan's pleasure. The instructor sternly says their rivalry must stay outside school premises. Janel makes it clear to Ray Yugim that difficult days now await him. His words threaten Ray Yugim with complete ruin. Ryuim merely appears perplexed. During lunch, he requests to join a table of students, surprising himself when they promptly gather their things and walk away. No one wishes to risk falling afoul of Janel, so the table is left deserted. The timid student hesitantly asks if he may share the space instead. The two dine together, and Ryuim voices his confusion about the student body's dread of Janel. The reason escapes him. The other boy explains Janel's gang now counts Ryuim as an enemy, foreshadowing misery ahead. Janel keeps pushing victims until abandoning school is their only avenue of relief, thus most shy away from associating with Ryugim. But the boy is also curious why Ryuim didn't simply overwhelm Jan when the chance was clear. Recalling their first meeting, he remarks Ryuim always seemed odd and jokingly wonders if perhaps he's some outlandish being from another age, a suspicion not so far-fetched. Their conversation ends abruptly as a teacher arrives, calling for the new transfer student. In a private office, the teacher poses a series of direct questions about Ray Yugim. He thinks the teaching staff are not particularly helpful and clearly do not uphold the noble archetypes once honored. Yet he understands perfectly well why he's been summoned and instructs Anhodi to dispense with pretenses. She immediately lets her act fade and is sincerely taken aback when he mentions sensing a trace of Kai in the school. Regrettably, neither one has any insight into who's Kai. 34 minutes later, lingers in the air. That explains why Ray Yugim instigated conflict deliberately. He wanted to provoke someone there into wielding Kai. The moment was ideal, but the teacher spoiled his plans. Regardless, he's managed to prove something critical. Martial Kai is still present in this world. Meanwhile, Janel continues to torment the timid student, which is only going to make Ray Yugim's eventual retaliation all the sweeter. Janel is instructed to remove his shirt and retaliate, but he can hardly muster a gentle tap on Janel's shoulder, visibly rattled and full of fear. With a sneer at his opponent's petrified expression, Janel drives his hand into him with such force that the boy's whole body reverberates from the impact. The followers observe as their ringleader toys with his fresh prey, recalling how Ryujim exchanged words with Junho at lunch earlier. That's the reason for his punishment. At this speed, Junho will soon be forced to remove his own trousers. Suddenly, the bespectacled boy from before storms in to intervene. He's actually the class president, and after a conversation with Duel, he at last chooses to step in. Duel had felt let down seeing him continually bowing to those bullies. That exchange, which left him silent for so long as he tried to protect his future and maintain quiet, now prompts him to resolve not to stand by anymore. Suddenly, he lunges at Junel with commitment to taking him down, only for Ryu to step in and cut him off. confirming a suspicion in his mind. Next, Ray Yugim verbally dismantles Junul, coldly telling him that he isn't any king, just an ordinary scoundrel. That cutting remark spurs Jun's allies to attack the new transfer student. Ryujim recalls his conversation with the president, during which he promised not to stir up any issues, so he stands by and refrains. He also recalls Junho's own advice. Ray Yugim had once questioned Junho about getting close to someone already labeled as trouble. Junho had replied with plain honesty, "The strong are obliged to defend the weak." That's what makes this instant so satisfying. Even a frail-looking student has strength here, working alongside Ray Yugim to help him with what he finds hardest, fitting in. Back in the fray, one of Junho's lackeys injures his hand when attempting to strike Ryu. Mere moments later, Ray Yugim flips him down, firmly planting him on the ground, which also makes Ryujim contemplate his former self's vulnerabilities. The class looks on in astonishment. In practically no time, he has felled 2 students. He then directs his attention to the cowering Junho, taunting and proposing that the so-called king demonstrate his mettle. Tightly wounded, Junho loses composure and, almost deranged, hurtles forward with a wild punch. It all proves fruitless as Ray Yugim simply flicks his forehead and sends him reeling backward. Ray Yugim spares him not so much as a gaze, labeling him pitiful, shaming Junho with both words and blows. Junho collapses, sporting a conspicuous bump on his brow. Ray Yugim quickly realizes this boy is unworthy of ruling over anything. Truly, the presidency would suit the class president far more. While reflecting, Ray Yugim recognizes that the class president, Park Minguk, has been suppressing a remarkable power all along. He is the true source they'd been hunting, the trace of Marshal Kai. Fixing his gaze on the transfer student, Minguk questions what secrets are cloaked behind his actions. The other students can't decipher their cryptic dialogue, but it's clear to them that Ryugim has sparked yet another issue. At this moment, Duel appears, discovering Junho and his followers bested. She's clueless about the situation and catches the class president conversing with Ray Yugim. Yugim looks over, locking eyes briefly with her, and then breezes past without a word. Once class concludes, Shun and Duel reflect on the startling reality that someone like Ray Yugim now attends their school. Even so, in the presence of someone like that, Junho seems laughable, yet Ray Yugim is determined to reclaim dominance over his own domain. Shun observes that there's something unmistakably changed about Ray Yugim, a subtle shift hard to name. There's an ease about him that simply puts people at comfort, inviting their approach. Deciding that concealing the truth is pointless now, Duel confesses everything, startling Shun profoundly, and Shun faithfully swears never to breathe a word. Duel is relieved, she confided early on. It is fortunate, too, that neither her new manager nor the rising star has any proper experience. They form an oddly harmonious pair because of it. As Shun shares this realization, Ray Yugim begins to replay his earlier conversation with the class president in his mind. Minguk refused to divulge anything until Ryugim brought up Kong's name. But even after that, Minguk's bewilderment was plain. He was dishing out punches as always, unaware of their growing force. The unusual inquiries only made Minguk more rigid, ending their exchange. The memory of that punch remains vivid in Ray Yugim's mind, an echo of something long ago. Regardless, Ray Yugim is summoned for throwing the school into turmoil on his very first day. The administration insists on contacting his guardian. Ray Yugim responds by criticizing the instructor, and right at that moment, his so-called guardians appear, a group led by the National Intelligence Service Director and his subordinates. Picture attending a school conference with the director himself as your advocate. The government funds the institution and is obviously dissatisfied about recent events. "I'll handle this from here," the director tells Ryujim, leaving the instructor even more frustrated. And just like that, the issue is closed. Not long after, our infamous mischief maker reappears. She delivers exactly what Ryugu requested, Minguk's records stacked with every personal detail. Her findings suggest Minguk is mostly unremarkable. If anything, he comes across as someone devoted to his studies and Shung, child of tragedy with no parents. His only family is an elder brother. Ray Yugim finds the situation more challenging than anticipated. He starts to wonder if the class president is connected with security forces, which raises the possibility that Kong has nearly disappeared from this time. Even after scouring for any sign, he's still no closer to discovering their hidden truths. Later that day, Minguk returns home to his brother, who casually asks if something occurred at school. Minguk at first is silent, simply walking on, but eventually admits he witnessed someone employing a prosthetic, a transfer student who subdued the tormentors using that extraordinary ability. And troublingly, the newcomer already knows about their powers. When questioned about the stranger, Minguk paints a picture of Rai, a newcomer with long flowing hair. What follows leaves Minguk stunned. His brother vanishes before his eyes. Without hesitation, he contacts his superior and announces the person of interest has been found. Inexplicably, that target turns out to be a mere student in high school. The superior vents his fury about the debacle, especially disappointed that Minguk's brother wasn't around to guarantee success last time. Thus, Section Chief Kim gains the role he's long sought as the one now responsible for resolving the affair. This is none other than Park D-han, the same one who earlier disciplined his security detail after their defeat at Ray Yugim's hands. Once he has command of the school, Rayu returns all of Janel's amassed class tax to the rightful owners. At the same time, a mortified Janel starts to suspect the president must be supporting Rayu, for what else could explain such brazen behavior? This turn of events crowns Rayu as the school's new monarch, prompting excited chatter throughout the halls about his sudden rise. Once classes wrap up, Junho remarks that just having Rayu around makes the whole place feel as it rightfully should again. With a cheerful grin, Junho offers his assistance for anything Rayu might need at school, yet Ryugu catches sight of Minguk in the distance and declares his intention to seek his answers elsewhere. Minguk dutifully begins instructing him on how to separate the trash properly, while Ray Yugim mentally dismisses the routine as tiresome nonsense, and the class president finds himself mulling over the new student's mystery, made all the more unsettling by his brother's disappearance after their last encounter. 40 Len Minguk grows suspicious that Ray Yugim has ulterior motives for getting close, but then Ray Yugim reassures him that he can figure things out on his own from here. His tone infuses the air with tension, as though a confrontation could erupt at any moment. Ming's senses sharpen, and when Ray Yugim clasps his shoulder, he readies himself to ward off an attack. It soon becomes clear, however, that it's merely Dula catching up with them. Dula's also becoming wary of their whispered conversations, prompting them to casually claim that Minguk was simply explaining the intricacies of garbage sorting. Making light of the situation, Dula muses that it's amusing all three of them got in on special admission, and slyly suggests the two strive for friendship, as there's a shortage of confidantes for students like them. Later on, Ray Yugim and Dula are called to meet the head of the company. He summons them unexpectedly, offering what he calls a golden opportunity. Clearly overwhelmed, he declares they've landed a gig. A junior of his is producing a web drama and needs a student to fill a role. Dula fits the part perfectly. However, the shoot is far afield, so she'll need a chauffeured ride there. Naturally, Rayu is clueless about helping with that. Their handing him the car keys is almost comedic. Dula laughs as she informs the boss of Rayu's rising notoriety at school, a problem it seems as a proper contract is still out of reach. Therefore, Dula proposes they depart immediately, and their boss hands over his bank card to cover whatever costs crop up. Dula launches straight into having a good time, disregarding any caution about keeping spending modest. She even teases Ryuga that since he wolfed down 5 breads by himself, he's lost the right to grumble now. Rayu shifts the topic, observing that she seems quite familiar with Minguk. Smiling, she admits they've been classmates under special admission from the very start of their schooling. Special admission was intended for those struggling financially, but while it opened doors to the school, it plunged them into a rather bleak experience within those walls. Still, the class leader stood resilient, drawing inspiration from his brother who serves in security. But Dula, irked, points out that Ray Yuam's focus keeps returning to Minguk, not to herself. Ray Yuam turns away, feigning drowsiness, but in truth the word security has seized his full attention. Upon arrival at the filming location, Ray Yuam discovers that Dula prefers he stays at a distance, worried his presence will attract excessive notice. Consequently, she instructs him to pass the time quietly on the cruise bus. Just as told, he settles in, silently pondering memories of his past encounters with security personnel. This realization leaves no doubt. Minguk most certainly hasn't been telling him the truth. Likewise, Minguk's sibling, Daisy, has an air of suspicion about her as well. 42 have and right on cue, that same battalion of sharply dressed jesters appears at the bus's door. Ray Yugim feels a thrill at the chance to finally cross paths with Daisy. He assures them that as long as they cooperate and answer a handful of questions, harm will pass them by. He kicks things off by interrogating them about their actual objective. As silence lingers, he proceeds to a second query concerning the prior spectacle, but is abruptly interrupted when the group's leader makes the first aggressive move against Ryuga. A punch is hurled which Ryuem intercepts effortlessly, never even needing to rise from his seat. Strangely, this is precisely what the opponent wanted. Unleashing a torrent of Kai, he then executes an impressive move despite the cramped quarters. Even witnesses from his own side suspect Ryuem won't survive such an assault. But when the leader attempts a follow-up strike, it's Rigam who intervenes, sending the assailant crashing aside, left senseless and defeated. Choosing preparation over raw force, Rigam arms himself with an advantageous tool. The others hastily shrug off their jackets, as if that gesture alone could tip the odds in their favor. With the first adversary rushing him, Rigam observes that their Kai only emerges in reaction to particular provocations. He sums up the comparison, gauging their resonance by measuring each opponent's power against that of Minguk, even as he takes them down. Yet when weighed against the old Shung, Ray Yugim remembers this present echo is but a pale imitation. Dispatching them demands little effort. Once all are vanquished, he politely arranges them back on the seats as if they are merely napping. Their Shung lacked substance. However, it's evident the approaching figure commands an entirely different presence. Emerging from the bus, Rayem confronts a stern figure clad in an immaculate black suit. Darhan's frustration is palpable, his team bested in less time than it takes to blink. Ray Yugim wastes no opportunity, bluntly inquiring whether he's Park Dehan, and then boldly states, "I am the ancestor of the Park clan." As Tyne hears these words, laughter bursts forth. He finds the declaration completely absurd. Ryuga then names Minguk his own younger brother, prompting Tyne to swing a pipe right at Ryuga's head. Only after this does he pause to demand who Ryugim actually is. Ryugim coolly catches the pipe and retorts, asking Tyne if he's truly so eager to discover his identity, since both of them seek the same answer after all. Agreeing to resolve their rivalry away from prowling eyes, they migrate to a secluded park. There, Tyne gathers himself, unleashes an immense rush of Kai, and proclaims he'll only entertain questions if Ryu accepts defeat first. Craving the truth, the pair agrees. The champion claims all, while the defeated must disclose everything. Tired of being underestimated, Daihan is first to attack, his strike smashing into Ryuguam, sliding him backwards. Dehan is stunned by Ryugu's matching speed, offering rare recognition, though he makes it clear the competition is hardly over. Bounding from wall to wall as if treading stairs, Dehan descends with a forceful flying kick, but senses his every movement anticipated. For the first time, it dawns on him that he might be up against someone truly extraordinary. Ryuguam's identity may still elude him, yet Dehan is already suspecting this man's strength surpasses his own. Realizing he can no longer suppress his power, Tihin releases all of his Shung at once. He then assumes a position that leaves Ryuga astounded, the stance of the silent tiger fist. Even with Ryu meeting the attack head-on, the action radiates a tremendous, crushing pressure. Without pause, a second charge follows and Dehan blurs forward in another assault, trying to transition into a third blow. Ryu narrowly dodges, but the aftershock still shreds the park's trees. Pressing toward the fourth motion of his series, Dehan intends to conclude with a final, decisive hit, only to realize with his blow that Ryuga has already disappeared. There is one essential component for the silent tiger fist's perfection, and Ryugu displays precisely that. Impeccable silence, cloaking himself as a hunter, veils its approach before the final pounce. He critiques Daihan's flawed manipulation of Shung and demonstrates with certainty that he could have ended the contest from the start. Ryuga's opening reply alone launches Daihan across the field and splits the very earth from sheer force. It was in that instant the true divide between them came into glaring relief. Then Ryuam explains that even then, he didn't employ the fullest sequence of his technique. Soon, Dulo is baffled when they find a private car in place of the usual bus for the way home. It's a mystery to her how this happened. At dawn, Ray Yugim abruptly rouses Dehan with a slap. Now at the brothers' residence with Minguk gone, Dehan hazily recalls falling unconscious but remains determined to honor his vow, to give every answer required of him. Ray Yugim reveals that he's pieced together several truths. For one, Dehan's body lacks a natural connection to Shung. This led him to question Dehim's power until he found evidence within the home. A hidden bundle of pills surfaces not identical to those of yesterday yet serving the same function. Their purpose? To inject Shung forcibly, shedding light on how both Park siblings managed to harness it. Ray Yugim further notices that neither brother understands the gravest aspect regarding those capsules. The revelation provokes Dehan, who demands a forthright explanation. Ray Yugim provides it immediately. Their lives are at risk for as long as this pattern endures. Dehan's disbelief curdles to shouting, fueled by terror and outrage. Yet he fails to understand Ray Yugim's true intentions until Ray Yugim supplies a final stark warning. If Minguk matters to you, stay far from those corrupt influences. At that very instant, both sense a colossal pressure emanating from the doorway. It is a force entirely unfamiliar, leaving Dehan trembling in dread. At that moment elsewhere, journalists cluster in anticipation to question the illustrious star Yan Wu. Yan Wu's attention is caught as he notices Yan Wu nearby. She greets him courteously and receives his compliment, but in one movement he ensnares the group within a mystical barrier. His grip presses around her neck as he demands the reason for her continued existence. Real danger surrounds Tyne, and Yan Wu commands her to remove her jacket. She is stunned that he discerns her weakened state even after expelling Ray Yugim's power from within. Yan Wu analyzes her intently, while Yun cannot grasp how he reads her so completely. Then, almost as though sympathetic to her suffering, he offers unexpected aid. He turns to his own energy to mend hers rather than aggravate her injury. Afterwards, he makes an effort to win her trust, insisting he had no intention of forsaking her. Unexpectedly, the sight of her agonized face catches him off guard, the depth of her pain a shock to him. Even as Yan Wu's body is consumed by the fire inside, she can only grin. The reporters remain blissfully unaware thanks to the protective barrier, allowing the two to slip away unnoticed. In the aftermath, Diane finds herself haunted by Ryu's words. If his affliction continues to deepen, it could cost him his life. Suddenly, all of his recent struggles make sense. Now he ponders if the organization deliberately obscured that fact from him. He's left doubting whether trusting Rayun Qing is truly wise. Upon returning from school, Mingu is greeted by Dahan, who persists in his efforts to guard his younger sibling. As Mingu goes about brushing his teeth, he teases Dahan for gazing at him in such a bizarre manner. Unexpectedly, Dahan insists they can't use the pills any longer, asserting that the company has restricted access solely to members of the organization. Minguk finds that news frustrating since he longed for the power to impress during his evaluation, but Diane realizes it's too dangerous to gamble recklessly again. Right then, Minguk's nose starts to bleed, a grim sign of just how destructive those pills can be. Dan reacts in a flurry of panic and irritation, scolding his brother to be more careful about his own health. Minguk doesn't understand the cause of his brother's unusual behavior. To his mind, nosebleeds are simply a part of school life. The story then transitions to the head of CK Shield, who's dining while reviewing their most recent product version. The updated formula is more potent than the last, delivering remarkable improvements. Experienced professionals were even called in to assess it. Yet these accomplished fighters were effortlessly bested by a barely surviving man, attesting to the sheer strength of the Shung pills. The company's leaders are sure its worth will only increase. Presiding over this is Joe Nile, the company's director. Joanne also sits in on the proceedings. The astonishing spectacle surprises the director. His body continues to mend and profits keep growing. Customers clamor for more since just one treatment brings instant effects. It seems like the sort of breakthrough poised to shake the entire medical scene. In the meantime, they present it simply as a vitamin shot. Everything is unfolding precisely as they imagined. The boss then commands Diane to give an account regarding the man he was sent after. Diane can only recall the bitter defeat. he's paralyzed but unable to confess, so he fabricates that he managed it discreetly. For now, his fabrication buys him precious time. The superior instructs him to return to his duties and the focus shifts, following Mingguk's side of things. Irritation mounts in Mingguk as Ryan seems to cross his path at every turn. Ryan Cheng waves it off as chance, yet in reality he monitors Mingguk closely, but lately he's detected no trace of his energy. Ryan's gaze drifts outside and witnesses Zhang Yu pummeling Zhang Yu yet again. He vents his frustration on the boy because of what Riem inflicted on him. Zhang Yu finds himself thrown to the ground, reminded once more of the life he's destined to endure. Ju's goons simply linger uselessly, watching their boss deliver kicks to Jan Yu. Their stillness shatters when Dula arrives. The crew flinches, mistaking her for Ryamim. Locking eyes with her, Jan Yu strides over and moves to strike her face. But this proves foolish. At that instant, Ryugam intervenes. Trembling with fear, Ryugam flees the scene without glancing back. Ryugam reprimands Dula for her lack of caution, perplexed as ever by her knack for inviting calamity. With the knowledge he's gained about the pills, his priorities had to change. Graver concerns come first, and now he can't look after her the way he did before. Still, Rayuga's heart is unsettled at what might befall her in his absence. It makes him yearn for the loyal friends he once trusted with his very soul. Dula cautions Junho to guard himself, knowing Jiryuda and his gang would seize any opportunity to discredit him. As they depart, Ryugam has a dawning thought: to undo Gerenal entirely by publicly disgracing him once and for all. Thus he instructs Junho to defeat Gerenal on his own, a feat bordering on impossible. Even so, Ryuem holds firm, insisting this is the right path now that he walks without companions in the present era. He is prepared to entrust his strength to the one individual he believes in, hoping together they might form new bonds of fellowship. Once during primary school days, Jayug carried the same bookish air, just with a slightly broader frame than his peers. Perhaps it discouraged tormentors, but truthfully, he was the one tormenting others. Then, out of the blue, another kid slapped his plump friend and grabbed his steam deck, hiding behind stubborn denial. The brat even dared Yug to a public confrontation, right before a crowd of schoolmates. So, over several days, Jayugam steeled himself for his very first meaningful battle. He was confident even with the eyes of the whole school on him, at least until the scuffle actually commenced. Suddenly, he caught a fierce uppercut to the chin, with such force his glasses soared away. The force rocked him so deeply he struggled just to stay upright. Managed to catch his balance, outwardly he managed, but his resolve had dissolved within. That initial blow shattered every ounce of assurance and froze his body in place. Dread swelled until air itself seemed scarce, and his classmates broke out in cruel laughter. To those kids he was nothing but a fool. And now, at times, Joy Yugam feels that day scarred him so deeply, it even stunted his height. In present day, he wakes up sporting a bewildered expression. Dale says he fainted. Ryugam adds that he's managed to open one of Joy Yuga's Kai points. Jo Yuge wonders aloud if it's anything like those sensational martial arts comics he consumes. Dale confesses that she's at a loss for words herself, but nonetheless, Ryuga has changed him, made him more powerful somehow. Ryugam greets Junho with a gentle smile, assuring him that he's grown mighty enough to take on 100 foes single-handedly. Juriam wholeheartedly believes him, exclaiming he senses newfound strength surging through his veins. That evening, Diol grows exasperated finding Ryugam still tailing her home, but Ryugam softens his presence, promising to depart as soon as she's safely inside. Curious, she inquires about his lodging, and upon learning how distant it is, she decides to accompany him all the way instead. Along the path, she treats him to ice cream. The moment he tastes it, he's left in delighted wonder, having never encountered such a splendid dessert before. As he relishes the treat, she abruptly asks if he's concealing something. His odd speech and peculiar focus on points make him seem like someone from another era. She comes close to unraveling his secret, but just then an elderly woman loudly reminds her that young ladies shouldn't be out so late. Ryugam turns instantly, and the woman recoils in shock once she discerns he's male. Annoyed, the woman criticizes his appearance, calling him unattractive because of his long hair. Ryugam pays no mind and detects an unsettling presence in her bag. He courteously requests a look inside her purse, but that only deepens the suspicion around him. Stunned, the old woman begins to shout for assistance. Dale swiftly interposes before the situation can further deteriorate. Before explanations can be made, the woman swiftly clutches her purse and races off as if hiding something precious. Dale questions Ray Yugim about frightening the woman. In understated tones, he reveals she had something harmful. Concealing the drug behind him, he's taken aback that it has managed to infiltrate this area already. Meanwhile, Junho contemplates privately in his room, wondering if his bullies could truly be defeated now. He then checks his height, realizing dejectedly that it hasn't changed since he was a little boy of 8. Gazing at his unaltered self, Junho persuades himself of defeat, feeling at his core that he remains that frightened child from before. The following school morning brings surprise to Dale when Ray Yugim turns up ahead of time. What astonishes her even more is his freshly trimmed hair. She laughs, teasing if last night was his inspiration. He replies, "No, the weather's just heating up." His eyes then rove over the pristine classrooms, and Dale realizes he's watching out to see if Junho keeps his word and arrives as promised. Ryu mentions he must remain hidden if he's to test Junho's bravery, while also ensuring Dale doesn't intervene. Together, they quietly observe as Junho dramatically flings off his shoe. He picked a new, plumper target and commanded him to crawl and fetch it in his teeth, like a dog obeying its master. The entire class simply observes, paralyzed by fear, knowing that Junho commands the halls in Ray Yugim's absence. Yugim leans over to Dal, wondering aloud if she believes Junho will truly stand up for himself. Dal replies that even with Junho's faith in his friend, finding the nerve to resist doesn't just blossom in a single moment. Precisely then, Junho bursts through the doorway. Coming upon Junho, who's humiliating the stocky student just for a phone, Junho snatches up a shoe and flings it across the classroom, striking Junho squarely in the face. He calmly instructs the tormentor to return the phone like an obedient child. Junho is left speechless. A scrawny bookworm actually dared such defiance. One henchman comes forward, demanding if Jun believes Ryu will save him or if he's gone mad. Despite trembling, Junil announces he's here to topple Junil's reign. And though he may not have grown over the past 11 years, he's left his cowardice behind. Dale can hardly grasp that meek Junil truly defended himself. When she asks if he truly possesses the strength to defeat anyone as Ryugu boasted, he shrugs and says, "Not really." His Kai point remains dormant. Meanwhile, Junho gears up to battle his first challenger, Kim. Both unleash powerful punches simultaneously, and as Junho is flattened by a heavy swing, the classroom falls silent. Kim admits the nerd nearly landed a shot before, but as a seasoned fighter, sidesteps and plants a perfect blow to Junho's liver. Next, a fist smacks into Junho's face, leaving him puzzling over why he's always the one suffering. Even Kim's buddy urges restraint, cautioning he might actually hospitalize the kid, but Kim persists in pummeling Junho without pause. This is when Junho finally recognizes he has been afraid all along. As Kim looms over him to deliver the conclusion, Dale grows frantic. She demands to know why Ryu deceived them about awakening Junho's strength, as he's clearly still just as fragile. Ryugu remains eternally patient, stating, "Fear and courage are two sides of a coin, each is born from trusting oneself." At this turning point, Junho reaches his limit. Tapping into something deeper, he converts his fear into bravery. He hurtles forward, striking upward with a forceful headbutt that immediately floors the much larger adversary. Astonished by Junho's sudden strength, the whole class can only gape, though Minga promptly insists it was mostly a fluke. It happened merely to strike right on the chin. Still, filled with adrenaline, Junho challenges the next contender to step up, yet in response receives a brutal kick square to his jaw. Afterwards, the victor instructs his follower to haul away the loser like refuse. To the astonishment of everyone present, Junho gradually rises once more, determined to continue the struggle. Unconcerned with his wounded body, he lunges at the unbeaten top dog of the school, only to take a strong knee blow to the sternum. Junho drives the opponent into the lockers, raining blows upon his face as though it were a training pad. He sneers at Junho, mocking whether his mind ever developed past his stature, and asks if he's forgotten their childhood years. The class looks on in wide-eyed disbelief as Junho continues to beat and ridicule him, intent on ensuring he stays down for good. At that moment, Ryu intervenes and halts the assault, telling Junho he isn't yet an opponent he can defeat. Nevertheless, Junho stands back up, flashing a mischievous smile as he questions whether all that talk about points was nothing but empty words. Each blow sears painfully, but within that agony he discovers parts of himself. He tells Ryu to step aside and not interfere. This battle is his own. Squaring his shoulders once more, he makes it clear that his spirit is unbroken. Seeing this, Ryugu beams with pride and gives his shoulder an encouraging pat. While Junho is still gathering his thoughts about whether this challenge is sincere, a fist lands straight against his face. Junho deftly slips the counter and rapidly assesses his options, but Junho calls him foolish for being overconfident and drives a sharp knee into him, nearly knocking him down. While Junho stands there dizzy, Junho maintains the assault, battering him with punches and ultimately kicking him back down. Witnessing his opponent rise one more time, Junho honestly applauds the youth's unyielding will. That's when Junho realizes that the strength bestowed by Ryu is what keeps him going despite the relentless assault. Still, he understands that sheer resilience is useless if he isn't capable of striking back in return. Junho charges to deliver the final blow, branding him a stubborn geek destined never to transform. In that instant, Junho wishes he could fight like the icons he idolizes and manages to imitate a scene borrowed straight from his beloved comics. Ryugu and Dale stare at him, perplexed, as Junho takes on a bold, theatrical stance, poised to put an end to a struggle that began a decade ago. Junho hollers about the nerd breaking his nose, but Junho starts executing moves remarkably similar to the acrobatic maneuvers found in action stories. Finally, Junho seizes Junho by the head and slams him into the earth to finish the bout. The entire class sits in stunned silence, questioning if he truly overcame the top fighter at school, and in that moment Junho recognizes the strength had been within his heart all along. All he ever truly required was to believe in who he was. Junho ascends to the rooftop while clutching his sore face, searching for the person who summoned him there. Then a voice from above catches his attention. He glances up, spots Ryugim, and at once calls him master. Ryugim, puzzled, asks him why. Junho simply answers that following him just feels natural, deciding then and there to be his disciple. Ryugim drops down, circles about him, observing him intently. He remarks that Junho's earlier move resembled Chid at the start, but now it appears to be something different altogether. Shio confesses he just copied a sequence from a low-budget manhwa. Laughingly, Ryu responds that comics these days are essentially like old martial arts tomes. Zayo wonders aloud if his master only granted him that power temporarily, as he already senses it slipping away. Spotting his gloomy expression, Ryu wonders why he is so downcast after besting the bully. He should celebrate. 58 Haven Shio joyful. Shio confesses he'd like to possess that power permanently. Ryuga tells him such might can be his if he agrees to assist him. Shia's astonished eyes widen, it almost defies belief. Deep down, Ryuga knows he's spinning a tale, for no real strength like that exists. Nonetheless, Shio wholeheartedly accepts, proudly calling it the sacred responsibility of a pupil. With not another word, his supposed master vaults over the rooftop's edge, summoning him to follow suit. Shio exclaims, "Zhongba man," to Jim Modi Wichong replied him, there is absolutely no way he can leap that gap. So he dashes toward the stairs, already certain that this training will be nothing short of grueling. At dawn the next day, Diane readies breakfast and calls for her brother to wake up. Yet Minguk remains silent, offering no response whatsoever. Growing irritated, Diane mutters that she's practically raising a child, then rips away the blanket and freezes in shock. He quickly dials Ryu, urgently describing what's happened and declaring he'll cooperate with anything Ryu demands. Now Minguk carries the very same curse marks that once scarred Unhai. His condition has deteriorated so much he cannot even open his eyes, sweat soaks him through. With no one left to lean on, Diane pleads desperately for assistance, explaining Minguk is his only remaining kin. Ray Yugim advises him to dial the number he hands over, assuring her he will do all he is able. While on the line, Rayu busies himself by clipping away at his hair, deciding that long locks on a man no longer suit these modern times. After the conversation ends, Zioil, the physician for the CK Shielders, receives a sudden call from Chairman Zhang Fua. Zio Sha Un Huan admits matters went awry while handling Dula, and Jiao wonders aloud whether that's the same young woman he'd instructed his daughter to take charge of. It's at that moment the chairman's daughter interrupts, telling him to return to his golf game. Remaining on the line as he takes his swing, the chairman learns that Park Diane's claim about having dealt with the girl was false. Consequently, Jiang Wan now requires Gure Yunal to intervene personally. Meanwhile, the red-haired affiliate reports that a fresh batch of 100,000 ampoules is finalized and already being disseminated. He mentions how incredibly quickly they've surged in popularity, thanks to their potent addictive nature. The plot is for their distribution across the globe. While all this transpires, Dihen arrives at the Yang Jin High Gym Hall. He's acutely aware of a nearby presence and scans his surroundings, only for Yunshai to emerge suddenly, nearly giving him a fright of his life. Stunned, Dihen inquires if she is the person he summoned and whether she genuinely possesses the power to help. Yunshi answers solemnly, she channels her Kai, all business. She cautions him, only provoke her if he yearns to find himself dancing foolishly exposed. Dihan halts, jarred, even she commands Kai, leading him to wonder just what manner of people he's dealing with. Shia clutches his collar to inspect the curse but abruptly pauses, struck by a familiar resonance. Dapon swiftly swats her hand aside. He questions when Ryugu intends to arrive since he claimed unfinished tasks held him up. At that exact moment, Ryuga steps in, drawing back his hood. Both Dapon and Yuni are left speechless at the sight of his freshly shorn hair. Ray Yugim remarks on his haircut, playfully asking if it's finally plain enough to blend into the present era. Zio immediately queries what compelled him to cut it off just now, as Dapon sharply points out he chose a trim over aiding his suffering brother. Ryu reflects that he long believed he didn't belong in this era, but he's come to realize that, in order to defend against foes like Ye Yunhu today, he must first comprehend the world as it is. He then reveals to them that a perilous substance is about to be unleashed everywhere, and he needs their alliance to halt its spread. Before their departure, Ray Yugim questions Yun Shenai about Yunhu's return. She appears startled and wondering if Ray Yugim crossed paths with him somewhere. In response, Ray Yugim calmly assures he could only sense his aura. As is often the case, Dahan interjects, asking if he could truly tell whose presence it was, yet Ray Yugim pays him no heed, insisting they move on. Diane's focus sharpens, he cares solely about rescuing his brother just now. At this, Ray Yugim astounds him by revealing he has already examined Minguk's state. Based on his observation, it is possible Minguk cannot be saved. He continues, noting that something unfamiliar has been added to the core curse. Dihan inquires whether a different type of ampule could have been the cause, and Ray Yugim insists they must uncover the precise contents of this new form before it's too late. Dakin finally acknowledges that he's heard whispers about a novel ampule being produced on mass, more potent results, yet heightened dangers. He wonders aloud whether its discovery might rescue Minguk, but Ray Yugim, noticing Dakin's growing skepticism, asserts no hospital on Earth can restore Minguk. To comfort him, Ray Yugim gently touches the place where Dakin's scar marred his skin, and instantly the cursed flesh returns to its healthy color. With gratitude, Dakin now believes his brother is not yet lost, and so the trio sits together to devise their strategy. Yunshiny questions whether Ryu might know the whereabouts of the elusive ampule. He admits that such knowledge comes at a premium, and only by following shipments of these ampules might any clue be revealed. When Yunshin proposes confronting those at the top directly, Ryuim draws forth one of the ampules and reminds them that their true purpose is to destroy it. He elaborates, explaining that those higher up might themselves only serve the interests of someone even higher. Diane agrees it's premature to go after such figures, offering instead to discreetly gather insider information, an idea Yunin plainly finds troubling. Diane then mentions there remains something undisclosed. What he then uncovers so astounds them that even the ever-composed Ray Yugim finds it bewildering. On the following morning, their teacher grows frustrated when the class denies him the customary greeting and inquires about the absence of their class president. A student announces that the president is not present today. This causes a stir as everyone knows Minguk is never one to skip school. Janel is missing as well, and Junhoo remarks that perhaps he's too embarrassed to appear after what happened the previous day. Later, atop the school with the clouds drifting by, Doral bursts in, accusing Ray Yugim of withholding the truth about Minguk, remarking that Minguk would never simply remain at home, not even if ill. Ray Yugim, unflustered, claims ignorance, though she sharply accuses him of deceit. He wonders aloud if she's fearing the worst, but assures her that Minguk will return before she realizes it. The last he checked, Rayu used skillful Kai energy to stabilize Minguk's poor condition. It prevented his state from declining, although he could not awaken him, and sensed there was a chance Minguk's sleep might last for months. Thus, when Ray Yugim asserts that Minguk will be back soon, Jush becomes skeptical and presses for the truth. In that instant, he perceives someone's approach, swiftly covers her mouth and whispers a warning that another is near. The door creaks open and Seon enters, searching for Duel. Duel reassures Ray Yugim to stay calm, since she's already confided everything to Seon. He grows anxious and questions precisely what had been disclosed. Douche throws her arms around Seon, declaring that as best friends, she naturally had to tell her everything. With a gentle nudge, she encourages Kaun to step forward and offer a proper greeting, as it is the first genuine encounter between them under these circumstances. Crimson creeps upon Zeon's cheeks, but just as Rayu comes closer to say something, the tale rewinds to the moment when Do-Hai Hen first revealed that startling information. He revealed that both Ryuim and D-Lid were actually the primary targets of his superior, though Da was singled out initially, prompting Do-Hai to attempt to intervene by submitting a spurious report. Ryujim prompts him, inquiring about the true identity of his boss and asks if Da indeed has become a victim for elimination. D-Las admits uncertainty, confessing that his superior was bound by an old obligation to someone and could not refuse even at another's expense. He acknowledges how shameful this confession must ring. Now returning to the present, Ryujim bends close to Shin and shares quiet words into her ear. Almost instantly, her shyness pivots to astonishment, prompting DL to urgently demand to know the nature of the secret exchanged. Without offering any clarification, Seong dashes away as if her very life is at stake, and moments later, Nai enters the scene. Ryujim, wasting no time, asks if she's uncovered any leads concerning the boss mentioned by Day. He wonders aloud if the man's surname happens to be Choi. Upon Eun-Hai's confirmation, she expresses surprise at his foreknowledge. Ryu's eyes grow sharp with coldness. Eun-Hai then inquires if he recalls Chaeyong from their earlier days. Ryujim responds, affirming that the memory of that brute remains clear. He once served Yan Wo during the Okian period. Eun-Hai proceeds in her briefing, revealing that very same villain is currently a chairman known as Cho Yong-W in today's era. The perspective then slides to Young-Wan. Languishing without activity, his stomach protesting, he irritably orders his subordinates to procure food before his patience vanishes. During the journey homeward, Dalia's restraint falters, compelling her to ask Ryuji what words were exchanged with Siyuan that could have provoked her sudden flight. He claims the truth would seem incredible, but at her insistence, finally divulges that all the trouble she endured was rooted in Seon. DL stands dumbfounded. Skepticism battles within her, but as realization dawns, an unforgiving reality settles heavily on her chest. She rushes ahead, unable to mask her distress, announcing that she'll continue alone from this point onward. DL's mind drifts back to lonely afternoons upon the school's stairwell, recalling when Seon first called her name and proposed friendship. DLA had warned then that associating with her held no benefit, to which Seon simply answered that her wish was for both of them to find happiness. In that past moment, every word appeared absolutely sincere. As reflections flood back, DLA recalls each shared instant, laughter at lunchtime, exploring shops for outfits, their voices blending wildly at karaoke sessions. But then Seon abruptly returns to reality, grappling with how far she's drifted from those golden days. Ascending the stairs, Se-yun is haunted by Ryuim's shout, the confession of her hatred for D-lit, causing her to wince and press her palm to her face in regret. She reflects in hushed resentment on the twisted state her life has become, quietly murmuring a curse upon them all. Meanwhile, Janelle and Jong-wan consider what the future may hold, but their exchange is interrupted by Jong-ws. Jong-wan requests Janelle's absence for a moment and in a rare softness apologizes to his daughter for past actions. He assures her that there is no need for worry, Janelle has taken charge and resolution is near. At their concealed spot, Dilasa expresses urgency, for the new substance is likely already finding its way through the streets. Because delivery was not assigned to his crew, he suspects others may be onto them. Nevertheless, he notes the pills can still be obtained. Some dealings circumvent middlemen altogether. Certain transactions occur quietly, much like drugs dealt on street corners. When Yuning fails to follow, Ryuim probes into how those clandestine exchanges take place. Da explains that, typically, social platforms and Telegram facilitate them. As confusion fills their faces, he tries to clarify that Telegram is actually a mobile application, but the concept still eludes them entirely. Dean quickly grows irritated and Yun Xiaobei intervenes, insisting that he start explaining from the very beginning. Rather than elaborate, he remarks that an expert is needed for these matters, a fact which dawns instantly on Ryu. Within a Telegram group, a dealer announces an introduction of a strange new tablet, mislabeling it as a vitamin injection. Yun Xiao is quick to express his interest, to which the dealer instructs him to wait at the X-Line's final station. Taking his seat, Yun Xiao reassures himself that his sole responsibility is to guarantee the deal proceeds without problems. He recalls Ryu's promise to arrive after the transaction is finished, but despite this, he remains uneasy due to the unpredictable crowd. Anxiety grows steadily inside him as the moment approaches. With the train drawing near to its last destination, an urgent call of nature overwhelms him. Junho finds himself alone in the coach, waiting restlessly and wondering about the dealer's whereabouts. Suddenly, the door bursts open and a rough-looking man enters, ordering him to step forward. Believing he's finally met the dealer, Junho picks up on the man's studied indifference, noting how he steadfastly avoids his gaze. Maintaining an air of nonchalance, Junho approaches with the cash, but at the crucial moment the thug withdraws, pausing to answer his ringing phone. Junho gets a jolt when he hears the man announce, "It's off, the director gave the order." Those words make his insides twist with dread, making it instantly clear that something is amiss. The thug beckons him nearer. Junho's heart races, desperately searching for his master's presence, then bolts, attempting to stall for time and carve out his own escape. But disaster awaits in the next car. Another imposing figure blocks any way out, trapping him completely until a recognizable voice cuts through, making Junho freeze where he stands. It's Dean, who says peacefully that he's among friends. Junho breathes out long, relieved that Minguk's sibling has arrived, until, in an instant, Dean grabs his shirt front, asking the toughs, "Did this kid stir up problems?" Dean thrusts Yun Xiaobei hard against the wall and rebukes everyone, insisting he'd been asleep next door and unaware this was the spot reserved for Team 2 exchanges. Yun Xiaobei reels in utter bewilderment, unable to discern where any allegiance truly lies. Deshin addresses the thug, asking in disdain, "Aren't you going to greet me?" prompting the man to quickly nod and apologize. But the thuggish lack of enthusiasm simply worsens Deshin's irritation. All the while, Ray Yugim meanders through the subway's maze like a puzzled child, searching for where he ought to be. In the train compartment, Desan abruptly changes course, telling the thug he needs the new pills immediately because he can't waste more time. To this the thug replies, Team 3 still lacks the official go-ahead to receive them just yet. Desan instantly slips into a composed facade, deftly probing for additional information. He mentions that Team 3 will receive their share by tomorrow anyway, and then nonchalantly asks where it's being kept. The thugs waver uncertainly, but Desan persists, suggesting they examine it now to avoid wasting time later. Gradually, the men relax, nearly on the verge of revealing something. Suddenly, both their phones buzz with an urgent message warning them against trusting Team 3, especially their leader, Desan. Desan instantly registers that his disguise is ruined. Without hesitation, before either man can act, he sends them both tumbling across the car. Even in the middle of the fight, he expresses regret and assures them his actions have just cause. One thug manages to deflect a punch and launches a counterattack, but Desan quickly adapts his technique and regains the upper hand. Finding himself trapped, the other thug opts to inject the enhanced substance into himself. Desan immediately senses that the situation has escalated dramatically. The thug hurls him against the rail with tremendous force, rattling the train itself, then grins and boasts that he wasn't even trying his best. Dan matches the grin and quips back that Team 2's quick adaptation is quite impressive. As the other thug pulls himself upright, he boasts loudly that while they may not yet rival Team 1, they're still leagues ahead of Team 3. Dehan is astounded to see him still upright, and the thug taunts Team 3 for being left out of the access to the latest pill. Lifting another syringe, the thug prepares for another transformation, but Dehan launches forward and crushes it instantly, attempting to bring the escalating fight to a halt. He issues a warning to the thug not to underestimate his team, and propels himself back into the fray. But before he can turn the tide, the second thug seizes him from behind. He taunts Dehan, calling him an ineffective leader. Dehan clenches his jaw, breaks the hold, then unleashes a swift uppercut kick at the first thug's jaw. Flowing seamlessly, he transitions into a perfectly executed bicycle kick. The second thug barely reacts, startling Dehan, and one punch from the thug sends him slamming against the car's wall. From the sidelines, Duo exclaims that he can't fathom how someone like Dehan became the leader, but Dehan interrupts, shouting at Duo to seek safety in the neighboring car. He draws a deep breath, attempts to quickly analyze what's happening around him, painfully aware that he cannot depend on any pharmaceutical enhancement. With renewed fervor, both thugs inject themselves and disappear in the blink of an eye, only to materialize behind Dehan before he's able to respond. They attack with brutal force, hurling him across the car, relentless in their assault as the windows tremble and fracture under the intensity. Yet as they go in for what they believe will be the finishing blow, Dehan remains on his feet, his eyes faintly aglow. All too late they perceive that he too has taken the injection. With a cocky smile, Dehan steps forward and concludes the battle with one devastating strike. Juno stands like a statue, completely incredulous that the one once sprawled on the floor now stands triumphant. Later that night, high in the mountains, Rio and his allies ensure the recovered thugs remain alive for later interrogation. Dehan laments that Raj's frequent mishaps could cost him his job, while Raj simply shrugs it off, commenting that the subway ordeal had been more challenging than predicted. Juno reminds Rajom that he had already forewarned him, but Rajom chose not to listen. Next, Juno asks whether eliminating the thugs would make Dehan's work any more secure. After getting some responses, and with Dehan nearly bursting with outrage, shouting that this is madness, Juno wonders aloud if he should go. However, Rayo tells him to stay and witness the interrogation. Dehan insists they must hurry, warning that if the thugs vanish, suspicion will stir and worsen the situation. He states that those men likely wouldn't reveal a word even with a blade pressed against their throats. Then, with a mischievous grin, Dehan remarks that they have just the person for this assignment. Just then, Yuning steps in wearing a daring ensemble and radiating confidence, takes a seat right on one thug's knee. She questions whether she truly has to carry out this act before an audience. Rio Jane instructs her to obtain the information swiftly, making use of her spell of illusions. She offers a faint, knowing smile, gently strokes the thug's face, and coos that they are about to have a bit of fun. Inwardly, the man recalls the tough missions he'd endured for the Syndicate, calling on those memories to fortify his willpower. He holds firmly to the conviction that nothing could ever persuade him to betray the brotherhood he cherishes even more deeply than his own kin. Yet when Yuning unleashes her entrancing power, he slips away into a haze of gentle dreams. He is bewildered to find himself sprawled on a bed until he notices Yuning positioned above him. Wearing a captivating smile, she urges him to grant her what she desires, tempting him with the promise that he will receive his deepest wish as well. Back in the real world, all who watch are deeply unnerved by the warped look on the once resolute man's face. Overlooking that for now, Yunai inquires as to the location of the hidden drug, To the utter amazement of his comrade, the thug promptly reveals it's concealed in Director Keen's cellar. Tiana is absolutely dumbfounded. She never imagined there was even a basement. For all his years working there, he remained unaware of its existence. Ryoji then demands to know why they persist in distributing such a perilous substance, despite their knowledge of its consequences. In a voice chilled with detachment, the thug confesses that nearly every group except Tynes is aware of the scheme. Even more disturbingly, he admits that children are the primary targets, despite them being the most harmed by these side effects. Yet he insists he doesn't understand why the drug is spreading so rapidly, explaining that he's simply acting for the payout. This leaves Ten shaking with anger, ready to pummel the man's face, but Yunai intervenes, her mind on another plan. Within the illusion, she grants the thug license to go wild with her, and the hapless fellow starts to slobber with anticipation. Unaware that he's actually atop his own partner, he carries on recklessly while Yunai mutters, "This is so much worse than simply ending him." Soon after, Ray Yugim announces it's time to begin their mission. He sends Yunshai to infiltrate under the guise of the enamored thug, with Tyne remaining in place as backup. The following morning, Ru Jiang dashes into school to see Yun and nonchalantly mentions that he knows she is Qing's child. He still struggles to imagine that man staying anywhere long enough to father a child. He recalls just how fiercely in days past that man shielded children from any harm. Then Dula appears out of nowhere, beckoning Kun to join her for a meal. The narrative slips onward to the gym where he dedicates the remainder of his day to coaching Jan Ho. As night shrouds the city, Tyne quietly assists Yunai through her mission, his voice reaching her through a hidden transmitter. Watches from afar atop a rooftop, he instructs her to carry on as usual as if they share no words at all. He stresses the need for discretion, though Yunai lightly brushes off his worries. She remarks that the entire area sits in near silence, there's no soul nearby to pose any danger. Tyne reasons the authorities likely have urgent business elsewhere, which makes sense to him. Then his expression falls and hastily he urges her, "Whatever happens, do not look behind you." Standing in her shadow are the senior figures of teams 1 and 2. With haste, Tyne instructs Yunai to show respect and let her elders pass, still puzzled at their presence this late at night. Without warning, the two step into the waiting elevator and question why she hesitates to get inside. She answers nonchalantly and waits composed as the elevator doors begin to close. At the last instant, Team 2 Chief halts the door and snatches away her transmitter. He demands to know her reason for carrying such a device, pointing out she's not officially assigned to any operation and pressing her about the person on the other end. Feeling immense pressure from both sides, Yunai goes completely silent. Tyne, worried, shouts anxiously demanding her answer, but within another moment she reassures him with quiet calm, "Take it easy." She has already made it to the basement. After confidently claiming the team leaders were easy to outwit, Tyne warns her he senses something is terribly wrong. In the basement, Yunai discovers an empty room, its only feature, ventilation shafts stretching deeper within. She complains about the tightness inside, crawling through until she drops into the adjoining space. Tyne offers her his praise and says he'll inform Ryu, but Yunai tells him to wait. What she's found is not a stash of pills or contraband. Tyne goes tense as suddenly Director Chadjani on Pry's unmistakable voice cuts through their comms. With a knowing smile as if all was foretold, the director addresses her politely, "May I ask who you are, Yunshai?" He muses aloud that he had expected Dehan instead. Now Zio Yun Sha inclines closer and confesses he has doubted Dehan's accounts for quite some time. Thus, one evening he invited Minguk out and clandestinely secured his cell phone. While Minguk left the table, the director nonchalantly installed a virus upon the device. Dehan instantly grasps. The secret cache was a ruse all along, the operation was doomed before it began. He quietly asks Yun Zio Bei if she can escape unaided. He receives his answer when, composed, she lands her palm upon Zio Yun Shaw's chest and expels him backward in one bold strike. As she withdraws, she makes an attempt to cast an illusion over the director. But before the trick can succeed, those same leaders whom she believed defeated reappear, obstructing every route out and cutting her off. Arms restrained tight, Tian's chief raises a heavy fist, poised to deliver a thunderous blow that may finish her completely. At this critical instant, Dehan surges onto the scene, sending a roundhouse kick crashing into her captor. He chides them that it's disgraceful for so many to assault a single woman. Without missing a beat, the director demands to know how Dehan managed to uncover his hidden cache. Scanning the room, Dehan quickly realizes the entire stockpile has already been wiped out. Simultaneously, the rival team leaders administer the new substance to themselves. The director cautions them to keep an eye on the girl as they begin to encircle her. Dehan uses the remnants of his old drug to strengthen himself and tells Yun Xiaobei their only remaining objective is survival and escape. On that signal, the team leaders lunge forward in unison, displaying astonishing speed as they seek to end Dehan's life and set their sights on Yun Xiaobei. Noticing their intent, Dehan hurls himself before her, buying just enough time for Yun Xiaobei to hurl both assailants away with her surge of Kai. Observing her steady herself in a posture akin to prayer, he wonders aloud why she cannot simply bewitch them and make them turning on each other. Irritated, Yuna retorts that such enchantment consumes a vast amount of Kai. She needs to recuperate after her earlier failed attempt against the director drained her. Hearing this, he leaps to grant her some breathing room but is driven backward by a staff jabbed powerfully into his abdomen. His opponent spares him no mercy, plummeting from above, ready to grind his bones to pieces. Yet just as the blow is about to fall, the director calls a halt, questioning whether they are truly prepared to take the life of a brother-in-arms. After they have mercy on him, Zhao Yunsha asks what could have driven Dehan, who was once like his own flesh and blood, to betray them. That inquiry sweeps Dehan back to the dark days when Zhao Yunsha had supported him and Minguk through their hardships. He questions whether Ya Yunsha comprehends the depth of his feeling for Minguk. In response, the director declares he does. His younger sibling means everything to him in this world. With conviction, he goes so far as to say Minguk is as a younger brother to himself as well. Dehan reveals that Minguk's deteriorating condition is a result of sharing those pills in the past, but when the aftermath became evident, he ceased supplying them. Yet Minguk somehow continued acquiring more, and Dehan confides that his worsening state is the whole reason for his quest. The admission stirs a sick, victorious smirk across Zhao Yunsha's features. He confesses, unabashed, that he himself provided Minguk with those dreadful pills all along, and the revelation snaps Dehan's composure apart. With fury unleashed, Dehan drives a cruel fist directly into his enemy's midsection, flinging him violently against the wall. For a fleeting moment, the two remaining team leaders stand still, stunned by the sudden explosion of strength. Their gaze lands on two discarded injectors left on the ground. As blood wells from every fissure on the battered man, Yuning is struck by terror. Realizing the overpowering force Dehan displayed was due to a dangerous overdose that has now all but destroyed his form. Mad with anger, Dehan demands if the two team leaders were complicit as well. With no reply, the director retorts through action. A powerful kick sends Dehan crashing mercilessly into the wall. Once Dehan lies motionless, the director redirects his attention towards Yuning. Elsewhere, his comrade dashes outdoors at full speed after intercepting Dehan's desperate call. Close behind, as Jae-Yun Shingle's crew drop Dehan from a bridge and absconds with Yuning. Ray Yugim flies over the city rooftops, slicing through night's obsidian curtain at desperate velocity. Some moments earlier, Ray Yugim finds himself at the Institute of National Intelligence Service, honoring his commitment to assist their ongoing study. Out of the blue, Diane calls, her tone thick with urgency. She insists she'll support Yuning and urges Ray Yugim to come at once. Ray Yugim's nerves tighten immediately as he suspects the organization might have discovered their scheme, prompting him to dash off without delay. Shifting to the current moment, Ray Yugim detects a recognizable presence nearby, prompting him to alter his direction. Simultaneously, Diane Hen keeps slipping deeper but stubbornly clings to hope, despite the water relentlessly pulling him under. As moments slip by, an odd tranquility begins to envelop him. Just as his vision starts to blur, a figure approaches. For a heartbeat, he believes it must be his father, but it's actually Ryugim who hoists him out of danger. Catching his breath again, Dehan murmurs his gratitude, admitting that he's indebted to him once more. Ray Yugim inquires as to what transpired, and through shallow breaths, Dehan explains that Jae Yuning appeared out of thin air. He also shares that Jae Yun Xing possesses formidable strength and stands as the group's second leader. Stirred by rage, Diane Hen lashes out with frantic, unfocused swings. Ray Yugim gives him a soft tap on the stomach, urging him to steady himself before he loses control entirely. Diane collapses to his knees, sobbing, confessing that he put his trust, his everything, in Jae Yuning. Once his tears subside, Rayu quietly inquires about Yuning. Dehan reveals he's uncertain, having lost consciousness partway through, and says sorry for putting their plan in jeopardy. Rayuga keeps his composure, assuring they'll navigate these complications. Elsewhere, Yuning is escorted to an unfamiliar location. A physician asks after her comfort. She bluntly responds in the negative. Jae Yuning steps forward, promising to release her after a few questions are answered. When she's questioned about her reasons for aiding Dehan, she resolutely states her preference to discuss matters with the director rather than with him. The doctor grins uncannily and guesses this was her intent from the start, but assures her it won't be such a simple task. He wonders aloud whether her ties to the director are secretive, then remarks that by coincidence the boss has just arrived. With a swift bow, he acknowledges Zhang Wan's entrance. The portly chief lets out a hearty laugh, remarking that he only popped in for a drink but finds himself greeted by a visitor today. Zhang Wan gestures for the physician to depart. Alone, he sighs, admitting his assistant can be bothersome despite handling his tasks adequately. Yuning agrees, complimenting the man's cleverness. Zhang Wan advises her to spare his subordinate from harm as he regards him like family. Before he can say more, a vision flickers behind him, briefly distorting reality. Yuning leaps into action, seamlessly moving behind him, yet Zhang Wan reacts with lightning speed, launching a powerful punch that she narrowly sidesteps. She instantly discerns that the formidable creature in front of her is still the same as the one known in the past as choking. Zhang Wan stands tall, offering a respectful nod as he explains that he has become accustomed to this era with ease. Presently, he possesses a family, wealth, and influence, attributing all of it to Yang Wu, who blessed him with a life overflowing with comfort and tranquility. She inquires about his lack of surprise upon seeing her, questioning if he'd already guessed she, too, had journeyed to this time. Yan Wang refills her cup and replies that it's hardly astonishing since he, as well, has mysteriously landed here. Next, he wonders aloud if Chakrio Jun is present in this era, and ponders whether she actually abandoned Okian to join his cause. Yun Wo remains composed, brushing off his words as foolish. She clarifies that gaining Rio's trust was part of a covert operation, noting that he is now impersonating the manager of Dula, the girl John Wang has been searching for. Despite her steady facade, anxiety betrays her, perspiration trickles down her cheeks. Reclining, John Wang remarks, "That's no small revelation," and asks whether she's informed Okian. Yan Wu grins, calling him overly simplistic. Yan Wu confesses she'd be far more satisfied apprehending Ryugu first and reporting afterward. The creature merely cackles in response, questioning if this ploy is just her bid to regain lost recognition. Yun Wu retorts sharply that he had never been one to run from confrontation. Yan Wu quietly laughs, saying he now sees no reason to engage in unproductive strife. He further explains this encounter isn't premeditated by Yan Wu's design, so they'll wait to be summoned once more. Unlike his previous existence, he's found treasures and loved ones he wishes to shield. The narrative flows to what comes next. Irritated while awaiting her car, she grumbles that the staff should be dismissed. She had asked them to arrive ahead of time so she wouldn't be late to her acting course. As she raises her phone to try again, a sudden hand rests upon her shoulder. She spins around and finds herself silenced as a man claps a hand over her mouth, pulling her away. Yun Wan receives word during his meal, and upon learning that his daughter has been abducted, fury overtakes him, and he vows to punish the perpetrator without mercy. An officer barges in, reporting they've identified the abductor as a student named Ryo Jai. The tale shifts to Zhang Wan's history, back when he was called Cho Kaoyuang. A troop was dispatched with orders to capture him after he was declared a criminal, and to decide the fate of the child in his embrace. Kaoyuang flees through the woods, clutching the young girl. She questions why he'd risk everything for her, and the beast chuckles softly, confessing it is because of her endearing nature. He gently assures her that brighter moments await them. The soldiers' blades find him time and again, but soon alarm overtakes them. They recall the command, his life must be spared. Their commander yells that this assault is only the beginning and commands the shield-bearers to advance. Cradling the girl, Kyong charges headlong, toppling every barricade as shields are shattered and men scatter before his might. One soldier senses an opportunity, thrusting close enough to gash Kyong's shoulder, but Kyo-yuang retaliates with a blow that breaks the blade in two. With the same powerful hand, he hurls the man earthward, the impact enough to send tremors through those nearby. In the next instant, more soldiers dive in, ensnaring him tightly with ropes, finally containing the mighty beast. Amidst this upheaval, one snatches the girl and before Chun-Woo's horrified eyes, executes her. As her lifeless body crumples, Jun-Woo's eyes blaze with wrath and his energy shatters forth. His form contorts fully into a savage creature, and the soldiers, too late, understand they've awakened a force beyond their grasp. The narrative then shifts to current events. The burly man wakes from troubled dreams at Juniel's side, asking if the physician has discovered anything. The doctor reveals Ray Yugim and Diane might be involved, and the true objective seems to be the ampules. He attempts to reassure him, insisting he'll address matters alone, but the president declines, choosing to take charge personally. Elsewhere, the third security team comes to check on Diane. They question what occurred and grumble about being sidelined yet again. As their inquiries persist, they reach toward him, but D-Han bats the hand away and orders them to leave. Though remorseful inside, he masks it by snapping, branding them as worthless and unreliable. In truth, he seeks only to protect them from harm. His strategy succeeds, they depart in anger. Once alone, Diane reclines to recover. Then Ryuim enters, bringing along the scholarly Junho. Ryujim verifies that Diane's unit has dispersed. Gathering to deduce the drug's whereabouts, they find Mui Rai unreachable, with Ray cautioning them against haste. Diane concludes that since all dealings have stopped, the cash must now be hidden in a place well guarded. Then the quiet thinker offers a suggestion. The president's daughter, Shan, may hold valuable knowledge. Diane quietly notes the young one is braver than he appears, and Ryugam questions whether they are truly considering abducting her. At that very moment, Ray Yugim receives an urgent call from Daewala. Her voice trembles with alarm as she begs for his swift help, claiming a catastrophe even greater awaits. She explains her friend Su Yun has been snatched away, and the culprit behind it is none other than the notorious Jill. The focus then turns to Jill, who dangles an ampule before Su Yun's eyes. He snickers, remarking he never imagined something of this potency could remain in the shadows for so long. Su Yun cries out, demanding answers about her whereabouts and the motivations for this cruelty toward her. Jill grips her face and rudely commands her to drop the charade, declaring he's well aware her father leads the pill factory. He draws a knife, threatening to mar her features unless she cooperates. But just as he's about to commit harm, Daewala bursts in, tackling the tormentor aside and rescuing her friend. Enraged, Janel injects himself with the ampules instantaneously upon spotting Ryujim, Janho, and Diane Han arriving. With wild laughter, he shouts, "This time will be unlike any before." But before his speech finishes, Ryujim launches forth and seizes him by the neck. He grips tightly, demanding the source of Janel's information. Ryu ridicules him as well, stating things seem unchanged this round. Shale rebuffs him, laying blame upon Ryujim, and clings to silence. Without warning, the door bursts open with force, hurling the bully away as Zhang Wan enters the room. The doctor comes after, confirming the suspicions Ray Yugim and his associates are indeed the culprits behind the abduction. Chaos erupts almost immediately while Siren still lies senseless on the ground. Royem and Zhang Wen release their Kai in a tense standoff, both bracing for a savage confrontation. As Chu Yang strides ahead, the earth rumbles, and his very presence thickens the atmosphere with an unbearable weight. From the force radiating off Chu Yang, Royem instantly perceives this is no negotiator before him. Without delay, he urges his comrades to flee while the opportunity lasts, convinced he can stall the foe. Q is the first to attack, slamming his fist into the floor and fracturing the concrete. Ray Yugim narrowly evades the assault, then summons energy to unleash his silent tiger fist. The two warriors launch their attacks in unison, their blows meeting in a cataclysmic impact that sends shockwaves radiating through the station. Elsewhere, the other gang leaders move in on D-Han's group, but freeze in alarm as their own leader gets hurled into the ceiling as easily as a discarded puppet. Young touches down unscathed and more infuriated. In that moment, the medicine master realizes that Ryo's hit wasn't an attack at all. Instead, it was aimed at destabilizing the ceiling, ensuring it would collapse and offer his companions a route to safety. The secondary team leader rapidly dials someone while Young instructs him to secure Seon, promising to reunite after confronting Ryo. In a car surging forward, Seon gradually awakens, clutching her aching head. Tu kindly encourages her to recall recent events, and suddenly, Sun remembers being saved by Tull. Curious, she asks how Tull had managed to rescue her. Young-ho intervenes with a dramatic tale that accomplishes little but leaving Seon quietly baffled. Then the gravity of it all dawns on her. Chola had put her own well-being at risk to come to Seon's aid, despite all that had passed between them. Before she is able to respond, Junho cuts straight to the chase. Does she know where the pills are kept? With gentle composure, Diane stresses that this knowledge is crucial to saving his brother. Du solemnly adds that the substance is highly perilous, and they have no wish to see Seon caught in the crossfire. Gazing through the glass, Seon's expression softens as she confesses the pills are most likely concealed at her home, the one place she deems entirely secure. Moments later, they arrive with a screech in front of her residence. Diane is the first to step outside, only to be confronted by a crowd of henchmen awaiting them. With a rueful sigh, he notes that even wild driving was not enough, not without some regret at being late. Youngli emerges with a sly grin, announcing they were racing for first arrival as well, and slyly asks whether Dilahorn intends to face everyone alone. Demohar shows off his familiar boastful smile, asserts he'll dispatch every last adversary himself, and promptly injects a fresh dose. Zio simply stifles a yawn before chaos descends into open battle. Without hesitation, Demohorn lunges into the fray, trading powerful strikes and swiftly dropping several of his foes. When one ruffian moves to hit him, Demohar parries the blow and counters with a solid punch. "I'll never be beaten by weaklings like you," he proclaims. But without a pause, 3 attackers assault him together, striking with such force that he is sent flying. Du recoils, doubting how Dihan had ever imagined facing the entire group unaided. Whispering quietly, So Yun admits that at this point all they can do is observe. Though Yunho's hands tremor, he isn't content to simply watch, until a familiar voice interjects, questioning loudly if it's remotely just for a squad to gang up on a single person. Everyone's attention shifts to see that Dihan's comrades are arriving, bolstering his side for the imminent melee. Their captain begins barking out commands, and the skirmish rapidly descends into unrestrained bedlam. Fists flurry, shouts echo off every surface, and onlookers from rival teams can do nothing but marvel at Team 3's raw force and impeccable synergy. The fact that such a formidable crew is still ranked only 3rd strikes almost everyone as unbelievable. A few among the crowd even find themselves mulling over what sort of chief could inspire such fidelity in their followers. Before long, Team 3 catches on. The enemy's leaders have vanished, leaving just a handful of opposition bruisers to resist. Their head gives Dudihan a nod, promising to clear a way forward. He nods in acknowledgement, grateful for their timely arrival. The pill doctor watches, lips curled in a subtle smile, genuinely astonished by how harmonized Team 3 stands, and just a touch admiring of Dazian's command. Dasan then calls out for Jae Yunil, proclaiming he won't be beaten this round. Chuckling at his bravado, the physician assures him that he'll keep things entertaining, revealing his stash of concoctions. With a mocking grin, he stabs a vial into his own arm, eager to push the battle's limits. In a distant area, Ryuga and Jaeyong continue exchanging strikes that make the ground tremble with each furious blow. Ryugem slips just outside striking distance, only to swiftly circle back, launching into another attack. While closing in, he confides that he's been thinking over things and claims to understand now how Kaio Yuang views his subordinates, as if reasoning could reach him. Kaio Yuang remains silent, instead knocking him backward with a vicious punch to the gut. Ray Yugim skids over the dirt while Kaio Yuang snarls, demanding that he simply give up the fight. Realizing talk is futile, Ryu snatches up an iron bar nearby. He readies himself to finish this swiftly, believing it's always been this way now and before. Kaio Yuang has consistently misplaced his trust. Diano drains his last vial, fully aware this duel must find its end. Johnine taunts, sneering, and asks if Diane can still stand tall with so much agony eating him alive. Diane senses there's no turning back any longer. Hurling himself in with a formidable punch, he finds the pill doctor dodging with ease. Diane swings out wide with a sweeping punch as his next move, and again Jonal slips by, amusement etched into his face. Suddenly, the doctor finally takes the initiative with his own strike. Diane moves to cover himself, but the blow simply never reaches him. Slowly, he parts his eyelids, only to glimpse Jonal poised calmly before him. Jonal remarks, almost absently, that he was only engaging to pass time. The fights brought him little enjoyment. With that, he suddenly grabs Dehen, smashing him against the floor. Dehen, jaw clenched, stands back up and demands to know what the doctor meant. Leaning closer, the pill doctor elaborates, suggesting perhaps it all could have been more enjoyable. He informs Diane that as of today, CK Shields is finished. All he needed was this diversion to snatch every medicine amid the uproar, revealing that every step has followed his intricate plotting. He continues, confessing he's always recognized their boss as being set apart from the rest, someone blessed with tremendous aptitude, unaided by medicine. He admits he never could quite grasp it until one day an intriguing whisper reached his ears. There emerged another person mirroring his qualities, and now Chakri Gayam bears that very same mark. It sparked a concept in his mind. So he tracked down an unhinged addict and confided the true identity controlling the pharmaceutical company, effectively launching the abduction scheme. Events unfolded far swifter than he had predicted, especially with Dula getting entwined. He then deliberately guided their superior toward the site of the abduction, firmly laying the blame on Ryu. He states that it was irrelevant who prevailed that day, as long as his design continued unfolding. Still wrestling with it all, Dehen inquires if this was the reason the drug ended up with his sibling. Kundai erupts in laughter and mocks him, chiding that Dehen hadn't been paying attention. That moment wasn't orchestrated. It only happened on a whim. Just as he's now toying with Dehen. Roused to fury, Diane surges again, but Kundale moves faster, driving his claws across Diane's body and cutting him repeatedly before defense is possible. Diane catches on. The pill alchemist is fighting with tiger claws. Despite this, he presses on unflinching, spurring an amused gleam from Kendale. Intent on landing just a single true hit, Diane continues his assault. Each attempt is met with bloodier results until he stands shredded by countless wounds. It becomes plain Kaiyong is in complete control, ruthlessly toying with him as another savage cut lands. Diane's thoughts scatter, doubt begins to flood in, could this truly be his last moment? Then a transformation overtakes his face. His bitterness twists into a reckless grin, and in an instant he appears behind Kyongal, casually asking if the lunatic enjoyed their deadly game. He admits once believing his previous method was the key to victory. With a sneer he accuses Kaiyong of laziness and then smashes him with a crushing blow. Bones crack as the doctor is hurled away. Dahan has tapped a rare state called Yunryo, meditation in perfect tranquility. Ray Yugim had once spoken of it in a car, a point when the body's tumult halts and clarity fills the mind. Peering at the fallen Janel, Dahan asks evenly if he'd pondered why their strength diverged. That's the secret. The greater the noise, the more bedlam swirling, the further Dahan would dive into serenity. He then rises and insists they reveal the pill's whereabouts. Outside, Duel spies a handful of henchmen carrying suitcases out from the building, musing if the infamous pills are hidden within. Junio turns to Yunin to ask if this is truly the stash, but uncertain, she only lowers her head and says she's lost and clueless now. Her hands shaking, she murmurs that her father's capture is inevitable, and soon she will find herself alone. Dahan advances, crushing a spent vial beneath his heel, when Jonal suddenly assails him from behind, slicing into his abdomen. The pill shaman grins, remarking that Dahan's last attack nearly rendered him unconscious. Dahan's eyes flare wide. The first blow fell short and he's used up the last of his supply. Before he can react, Jonal seizes his shoulder and pleads with him to let go, all because, as he says, they were once companions. Dihun refuses to surrender, barrels into him and shouts for him to stay down. Jonel forces him off with a kick and demands to know what made Dehan's brother so significant. Dehan throws himself into the fray again, but Jonel tosses him aside once more, urging him to prize his own existence above all else. Although wounded, Dehan rises with determination, clutching one of Jonel's experimental pills and a faint trace of a smile. Jonel gazes at him in astonishment, warning that dose won't hesitate to end his life right there. Unwavering, Dehan plunges the needle into his own arm. Jonel's expression widens in shock when Dehan murmurs that everything else is meaningless as long as his brother survives. The narrative drifts back to Dehan's childhood at age 9 when all he longed for was an ordinary, joyful home. That fragile dream shattered after his parents parted ways soon after his father, rendered unable to work by a leg injury, lost his livelihood. The judge ruled that Dehan would reside with his father, while Minguk would stay with their mother. Tears streamed down Minguk's cheeks, fearful of being separated from his sibling. For his part, Dehan was furious that their togetherness had been torn apart. Yet faced with their father's vulnerability, Dehan concealed his anger, squeezed Minguk's hand and forced an encouraging grin, urging him to stay cheerful. He realized their father struggled just providing for one child, so entrusting his younger brother to their mother's care seemed safer. Once at the park, Dehan perched on a swing, wondering if Minguk had solved the hidden clue he'd prepared. Before long, the bright child deciphered the puzzle and joined him there. For an entire week, the boys carried on their secret reunions until adults eventually discovered them. After their scheme unraveled, their father sharply rebuked Dehan for sneaking off to see Minguk. It was the very first time Dehan witnessed such gravitas in his father's features. Seasons came and went after that. Trusting his father's assurance that Minguk was safe and well, Dehan believed it, until the day his little brother appeared at their old meeting place. Startled, Dehan dashed over and anxiously demanded the reason for Minguk's appearance. With bruised, swollen features, Minguk mustered a smile, telling him this time Big Brother had arrived too late. When pressed for answers, Minguk insisted he'd merely tumbled from the swing, but Dehan could sense the deception. The truth soon surfaced. It turned out their mother's new companion was good for nothing and vented his anger on Minguk. Without delay, Dehan went straight to his mother's door and firmly rang the bell. The moment that fortune seeker answered, Dehan burst in, seized Minguk and bolted with all the speed he could summon. That night, the brothers huddled close, making cautious plans for their next destination, frightened their father would find them and send them away to an orphanage. When their father at last caught up to them, Dehan braced himself for a thrashing. Instead, he felt his father's arms wrap tightly around them both in an embrace, as he sorrowfully asked forgiveness for failing to protect Minguk. 2 months further along, their father passed away, worked to exhaustion and beyond. Left without any other hope, the boys landed in an orphanage. There, Dehan silently vowed to care for Minguk whatever it took. Returning to the present, all those memories drive one thunderous blow from Dehan that catches Jun Neil completely off guard. Not even the defeated operatives can accept what's unfolding before their eyes. In a sudden turn, Dehan meets the director's power without flinching. While Juniel witnesses Dehan unleash an onslaught of dazzling attacks, curiosity flickers inside him, eager to see the chaos that will ignite from the mingling of the old and new brews pumping through their veins. Regardless of how hard he's hit, Dehan digs his heels in and returns each blow with rising ferocity. At this point, each moment lost seems to chip away at his physical limits ever more visibly. After Dehan boots Jae Yoonhil about as mercilessly as a kicking ball, Jae wishes he had only to wait out Dehan's stamina. However, patience is a fortune he can't afford. He knows there aren't 1 ga oda en as Cyrillic letter 4 5 6 35 have elen spare on the clock. Simultaneously, the two opponents retreat and then hurl themselves with all their force into one final clash. An impact so intense, Dehan is hurled backward by the resulting wave. Believing victory is his, the director sneers, frustrated the persistent elder sibling has managed to ruin his flawless attire. Yet his arrogance turns to disbelief when he sees Dehan, undeterred, find his footing once more. With a scowl, Jae Yoonhil demands to know how long Dehan intends to keep this up, to which Dehan responds with steely resolve that he'll endure as long as life clings to him. Thereafter they continue exchanging relentless blows, neither one willing to give quarter. Battered and breathless they persevere, pride trumping fatigue. Eventually the director lands a decisive punch, sending Dehan to the ground. Exuding smugness, he declares he was bound to win. After all, the drug aligns perfectly with his own body. But Dehan hauls himself up a final time and hammers his gloating adversary into the earth. He can't surrender, not when he remembers the vow given to his father. And so, with one last swing, he shatters Jae-yun's jaw, delivering a finishing blow that ends it. Dehan, spent but satisfied, sinks to the floor with a faint, contented grin. He takes solace that he held onto his promise despite every hardship. Elsewhere, Kai Kyung confronts our hero. Rugamong barrels in, clutching a steel bar, but the beastly adversary effortlessly blocks the attack with robust arms and tosses the challenger aside as though tossing a twig. 1 ga o da en a Cyrillic letter 45636 haya va len. Witnessing that, Ray Yugim alters his approach. He heaves an imposing blow overhead, drawing on both gravity and his Kai-infused might. The beast retorts in kind, unleashing formidable Kai to pummel his foe skyward, straight into the ceiling. Overseeing the chaos outside, the second team's captain frets that disaster will collapse the building before the battle concludes. Elsewhere, another onlooker stands dumbstruck, amazed that an unremarkable combatant matches the prowess of their leader. The monstrous fighter dodges move after move from Rug, his look suggesting disappointment at his opponent's unimpressive repertoire. Cutting him off, Rug follows up with an agile backflip. Snatching the steel rod mid-flight, he swings down with crushing strength that would have shattered his enemy's skull if it hadn't been deftly avoided. Rug doesn't let up, targeting each pivotal joint with punishing strikes. He lands 2 rapid swipes before deciding to reach the end game. Panic spreads among the team leaders watching outside. If no one is able to halt Rugam, who can? But then the beastly opponent clamps him by the throat with both hands, slamming him to the ground, and murmurs that he was never so feeble as Rug assumed. Kai Hyung hoists him across the hall, launches himself with kite-charged fists and drills Rujung directly in his center. It's astonishing, such a seemingly immovable giant can leap to impossible heights with ease. The beast claims flashy acrobatics are futile against someone like him, a warrior whose duels end with just a single hit. Directly afterward, his knees betray him, and he's struck by the onset of age's slow limitations. Sensing an opportunity, the leaders rush forward to assault the creature while its defenses are down. A colossal error! The monster seizes their skulls and hammers them into the earth, his hands ablaze with Kai, obliterating them like overripe fruit. In that instant, our protagonist emerges from the settling dust, and Chung grasps that he merely feigned defeat to lure the traitors to their doom. When Rugam raises the betrayal of all their comrades, the beast erupts in an unhinged chuckle. Pummeling the ground and striking his own chest, he laments that his own failures caused those dearest to him to turn away. Hearing the creature call himself unworthy of leading either kin or clan, Rugam quietly admits he has lost all desire to keep fighting. Yet duty still tells him to shield the organization from harm. Rugam instantly dismisses this, unsheathing his blade, crackling with lightning and severing the beast's grasp. "You should rest," Rugam tells the elder. "You have always been nothing but Okun's puppet, used then abandoned." That statement lands like a fatal blow deep in Chung's soul. Rugam continues, insisting their illegal dominion has persisted far too long, and tonight it meets its demise. Meanwhile, Chikiawang is swept away by bitter memories, reeling from the realization that every ally merely exploited him. His shoes disintegrate, signaling to our hero that the actual duel is about to commence. At last, Chikiawang lives up to his beastly moniker, bellowing that his treasures shall never be stolen again. Rugam is astounded. Rumors had named Chung the Supreme Beast, but it never occurred to him that the legend might become reality. As the giant hurtles at him, Rugam steels himself to withstand the onslaught. Drawing on his superior quickness, he lashes out with his staff, scraping through the beast's left rear muscle, betting on an exposed weak spot. Yet as he lunges for a second strike, the brute instantly repairs itself and launches him headlong into the wall. Stunned, Rugam grapples with the impossibility of such rapid regeneration. The monster barrels forth for a second attack, but this time its blow mangles the wall as Rugi slides aside and gashes its arm. Still, Rugum cannot fathom the beast restoring itself so swiftly after clearly receiving wounds. He then notices that the limb he just severed has already reappeared intact. With dawning horror, Rugum finally glimpses the true terror of Cha Qiaowang's beast transformation. It is not solely overwhelming might, but this fearsome ability to heal, rendering him all but indestructible. Next, the beast unleashes a furious attack aptly named Boar Charge, stampeding like a savage wild animal. He springs skyward and drops with violent force, intent on smashing Rugum beneath. Rugum guards with crossed arms, but the shock leaves him shaken to his very core. Even worse, Rugum can feel his own vitality ebbing away. It's as if unseen shackles bind him, suppressing his strengths and preventing his full potential. He swiftly realizes that exchanging blows is fruitless if the creature just restores itself after every strike. Desperate, he channels every last drop of his energy into his weapon, until his staff erupts in blazing fire. With a silent prayer, he hopes the flames can finally halt that monstrous healing. Declaring this his ultimate strike, Rugum storms forward, intending to finish everything in a single overwhelming blow. Simultaneously, the nerd and the duelist shout at the thieves snatching the ampules, urging them to bite back, but their boss simply orders the crew to dismiss the kids' taunts and continue piling up the loot. From her parked vehicle, Sean observes yet another armed faction arrive, questioning silently where their allegiance lies. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the monster steadies himself, preparing for one last decisive assault. He springs upward, unleashing a martial art known as gentle wind shatter, which sends violent shock waves powerful enough to rend the earth beneath. Rutsham confronts the onslaught headfirst, barely holding his footing under the force, blood trickling from his mouth, yet his resolve remains unbroken. Summoning his final reserves, he hurls himself at his foe once more, invoking his own finishing strike, the fireless extinction sword. His blade bursts with blistering might, swallowing the beast and searing through him as he hangs suspended in the air. The regeneration ceases at last. As collapse steals his body, the creature surrenders, accepting that he has been vanquished. When the conflict subsides, Ram murmurs that nothing can be sheltered forever. He confesses he himself was unable to do so. Life in these times has impressed a lesson upon his heart. Rather than trying to guard everyone himself, he might have taught those dearest to him how to guard their own futures. Thagging this, he honestly admits that he, too, stumbled. As the beast reverts to human form, he voices a single wish with the last of his life. Chung turns toward Ram, seeking a final favor, that he would teach his daughter Sane the art of self-defense, his exhausted smile lingering as life gradually ebbs. Just then, a new figure intrudes, remarking that he foresaw the beast's downfall. Emerging from darkness, a man appears, dragging the unconscious Jern. This newcomer, high-in with emerald locks, one of Akin's trusted supporters, stands unbothered by the carnage. The battered CEO casts a wary glance and questions what has been done to the physician. Ji-Yuan grins wickedly and replies that he had wooed the red-haired one with prospects of a fitting post, should he succeed in stealing the amp to his right. For him, life is a chessboard and Ji-Yuan never more than a minor piece. He concedes that things strayed from his original vision, compelling him to tidy up the remainder himself. Ji-Yuan solemnly proclaims, Oaken's command was clear, the amp you hid must be banished, far removed from this existence, and all bound to it must perish. As all this unfolds, the new contingent at the scene of the theft has overpowered the robbers and seized their haul. The story returns to find Ji-Yuan, who, in a swift motion, severs the doctor's head, bringing about instant death. He wears a small smirk, claiming this particular violence as his own twisted addition, then coolly alerts Rhea and the president that they are next. Without uncertainty, the beast lunges at the madman, his punch propelled by the weight and fury of 400 pounds worth of grief. Rutsham, gazing in disbelief, watches the ferocious blow tear through the air, slamming with force into what only appears to be Ji-Yun's frame. Yet the authentic Ji-Yun remains untouched, already leaping, suspended above the chaos. He twists elegantly to land, while the beast drops down, knees to earth, clinging to the family he has so recently and devastatingly lost. Ji-Yun ridicules him for letting himself unravel over such a trivial matter, remarking with a sneer, OK foresaw the beast's vulnerability for his children. Snickering, he then asks if Cho Hong truly believed he and Akin were his real kin. He then swivels to our protagonist with a sinister smirk, declaring, "You always pick the choicest ones first to devour." Unrestrained, he erupts into mad laughter. Jai Hyen leaps forward and the two collide fiercely. Their energies and auras slam together, trembling the very air. For an instant an equilibrium seems possible, yet the maniac quickly subdues our hero. Ru Xiao is stunned, for in his memory, the man before him never possessed such overwhelming strength. Exhausted as he is, he realizes victory is beyond his reach. As Ru Xiao reels from this, the emerald-haired adversary disappears, reappearing on his left flank, fists at the ready to strike again. It seems to our hero that he catches the faintest sound of a voice, and when he glances toward his foe's shoulder, he notices a radiant glow. He ponders whether this illumination is the wellspring of such manic strength. Yet, no matter how urgently he urges his body to move, it refuses to respond in time. Fortune favors him, the beast charges in, slamming the green-haired foe down, forcefully keeping him immobilized. The beast brings up their agreement, urging our hero to go while he restrains this madman. With a cackle, the madman questions whether the beast truly believes he can hold him back. Kai Kaoyuong rapidly interprets the situation, scanning his surroundings until his gaze settles on a pile of gas cylinders, and desperation plants a reckless scheme in his mind. He quietly offers an apology in spirit to his daughter, seizes the green-haired man by the collar and hurls him into the tanks, setting off a massive explosion that engulfs them both. At that instant, the nerd and duelist find themselves hemmed in by newly arrived foes. One villain bares his teeth in a wicked grin and wetly passes his tongue over his lips, his unsavory intentions toward the girl made glaringly clear. Panic sets in for Juno, unknowing who these interlopers are. Anxiety about Dihan gnaws at him and he hashes out whether he ought to intervene. Sweeping off his glasses, he bellows and launches an attack, well aware it is futile. Saving the day, Ray Yugim arrives before disaster can strike. Coolly, he announces that this won't take long, striding forward to single-handedly confront their opponents. He instructs the other two to find shelter, and when the men realize just who it is, Ray Yugim, the very menace Jane had warned them against, panic takes them. They are stunned, unable to comprehend how he made it all the way here. Meanwhile, at the explosion center, the president emerges with burn marks disfiguring half his face, but the emerald-haired foe suffers no worse than some trivial scratches. But what truly infuriates him isn't the agony. It's that his luxurious attire has been destroyed. Later on, Junho dashes frantically to the chamber where Ryugu appears to be tending urgently to Dahan and his sibling. He channels forth such overwhelming force that it radiates across the chamber, making the air hum. Bathed in sweat, he assures that there is still hope to save them. At the same time, Duel offers comfort to her companion, handing over a bottle of water, but Serene remains visibly unsettled by what Ray Yugim has revealed regarding her father. With the assurance that all lives have been spared, Junho breathes easy, grateful for their timely arrival. Yet our protagonist claims this was not the reason for their hurried journey. In that instant, a fierce knocking sounds at the door, leaving everyone guessing who's there. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, the boss arrives and finds Jai Hai present, surveying the ruin wrought by his subordinate's recklessness. Despite his dreadful state, Chiang questions how such betrayal was possible. Akin, ever stoic, takes a seat and calmly inquires about the true nature of their connection. The beast recalls his earliest days within the fold, how Akin sought his aid, warmly inviting him into the family. Echoing that promise, the beast recites the word and Okian responds that unity was their dream, until Cho Kaoyuong's heart chose another to cherish more. According to the boss, chaos ensues when too many dependents demand sustenance. He admits utilizing drug dealing to endlessly enrich his clan, though this was never the venture's true intent. Abruptly pivoting, he asks why the beast concealed truths about Ryugu. Cho Kaoyuong is left dumbstruck that his superior was aware all along. This only further inflames Okian's ire. He sharply retorts, questioning whether his own men really take him for a fool, and declares one has already paid the price, referring to Yuning. Locked in a fierce gaze, he commands Chung to divulge everything he knows about Ryugim. Under such immense intimidation, the beast is nearly undone, but maintains his silence to the very last. Disappointment evident, Okun departs, while Ju-hun slays his old companion without a glimmer of hesitation. Okian, recalling his glimpse of Ray Yuga with the president, ponders his future strategy now that Ray Yugim is bolstered by official backing. At the same time, our protagonist requests that the recently orphaned girl be granted refuge in the shelter. Observing Seiyuan's despondence, Dula gently assures her that she would be welcome to stay on with them if she wishes. Moved by Dula's generosity, Seiyuan nonetheless politely declines, expressing her resolve to learn self-reliance going forward. The director grows concerned at the idea of a fledgling aura cultivator and a solitary girl residing together in their youth. Nevertheless, our protagonist reassures that matters will remain proper as he shall soon depart on a lengthy assignment. The director panics, clearly taken aback. This was never part of their agreement, but Ray Yugim soothes him, vowing his eventual return. Comforted, the director appeals tearfully to the president. Yet the president refuses any argument, quietly silencing him with gentle firmness. He replies that if Ryu has sworn to return, they must put their faith in him and provide whatever support he may require. Such profound regard is of a royal order, compelling the deepest bow from Ryu, given before only to his revered master. Then the president poses his query about Ryu's destination, prompting memories of when Jai Hu-gayan arrived, announcing he had come to resolve Choyang's prior troubles. Back then, the beast admitted he still lacked the courage to oppose Okian's followers. Still, he remarked that somewhere in the depths of Baekduane, there may be an obscure sanctuary capable of restoring his lost strength. The story now follows our young hero wandering through the mist-laden woods near Baekduane. Fully aware that, in his current state, he cannot hope to confront a monster as formidable as Jai Hu-gayan, he recognizes too that only by attaining his highest potential will he have any chance of defeating Okian in the future. Venturing further beneath the shadowy canopy, an icy draft greets him from an enormous cavern nestled at the mountain's base. Stepping inside, he is entirely unprepared for the sight that greets him. Standing right before him is an immaculate replica of himself as he was 9 centuries ago. He examines every detail of the double, confirming with growing certainty that it is an exact likeness. Understanding this is precisely what Cho Yong-shing intended for him to discover. Nevertheless, he cannot shake the nagging sense of danger. And true to his fears, the instant his hand reaches toward the duplicate, it unleashes a lethal strike, one he narrowly manages to evade. Without hesitation, he draws himself into his foundational fist position, but his twin assumes the identical pose in flawless synchronization. It astonishes him to think anyone else could have mastered this ancient style. Determined, he responds with all his might, executing the one flash fist. Yet the clone reciprocates instantly, outmatching him with the very same maneuver. Ryu is left reeling, struck silent by disbelief. How could a mere copy surpass its source? The ground beneath ices over as the clone approaches with chilling slowness, its visage beginning to shift, soon revealing a face our youth hasn't laid eyes upon in ages. Many years before, back in his boyhood, he had trailed after a lone wanderer wielding an immense sword. This mysterious man, who called himself the Nameless One, demonstrated his extraordinary nature at once by smoothly felling a furious bear, showcasing peerless skill. The beast had been legendary, having slain 1,000 soldiers, but the Nameless One sensed potential in the child, asking his name. From that moment, he made the boy his student, imparting every technique he held sacred. After Ryogu's training reached completion, his enigmatic mentor disappeared quietly, leaving no clues behind. He never attempted to follow, secretly accepting that the master existed on a far higher plane than he could comprehend. Never did he imagine fate would allow their paths to intertwine again, until this very moment. Ryugim implores his revered teacher to explain his presence and wonders aloud if immortality is at play. But with a playful chuckle, the Nameless One replies that there is nothing so extraordinary involved. He says his journey simply moves through the currents of time more slowly than others. He confides that his form grows frail and less tangible as each minute slips away, yet his expression remains joyful for their reunion. A memory surfaces. once he had saved a stout, cheerful man with a remarkable resemblance to an animated kung fu hero. Though brief, their companionship was lively, sharing tales, including some featuring Ruji, between laughs. So, when their paths crossed again after 900 years, the Nameless One sensed destiny might also summon his pupil once more. On hearing this, Ruji questions the real reason for his master's visit. The Nameless One observes that restoring his former strength will require a great span yet, then gently asks why his student is so intent on growing mightier when he already towers above every living soul of their era. Ruji, humbled on the icy earth, confides that his greatest adversary awakened before him and now holds a terrifying might. Desperate, he seeks swift empowerment. To this confession, the Nameless One offers a pained, wistful smile and murmurs, "Destiny may wound us without mercy." He proceeds to recount an ancient prophecy of a destined protector who will stand as the ultimate barrier against darkness striving for dominion. It was this sense of fate that made him notice Ruji's unique essence when their paths first crossed. His mentor encourages him to rise, his confidence unwavering in the pupil shaped by his own guidance. Elsewhere, within the shadows of a cold chamber where Unhai waits captive, Okian enters. He voices his frustration that tracking Ruji has grown increasingly difficult now that authorities shield him. Catching the flicker of puzzlement in her gaze, he discloses that he had always suspected she acted under Ruji's orders. It was at the airfield, upon detecting Ruji's residual Kai laced within her, that his suspicions hardened into certainty. After the encounter with Chaeyoung, the stark terror in her expression revealed her dread of sharing his tragic fate. Suddenly, comprehension dawns for her. She recalls being overwhelmed and rendered unconscious by Okian's intensity, and now the remembrance unmoors her, unsure just how far Okian's prowess has grown. As Okian serenely inquires once more about Ruji's whereabouts, John steps inside, hauling the last lifeless body into the dim cellar. Only then is her suspicion confirmed. The Cho Yang she once knew has vanished completely. With a cold thrust, his hand pierces the fresh cadaver and he confides he showed a sliver of pity previously, permitting Cho Yun to retain his sense of self. But this occasion, such mercy will not be offered. He transfers the monster's true heart into this new vessel, leaving Unhai petrified as sinew contorts and reshapes, animating lifeless flesh. Instantly she knows it for what it is, the forbidden arcana. Even Okian concedes that employing it comes at formidable personal cost. With a smile that freezes her blood, he tenderly brushes her head and instructs her to behave, promising to return for her. Evidently, a matter of far greater consequence demands his involvement. The narrative drifts to Daepan and Minguk sitting together at supper, eldest brother coaxing the reluctant other to dine, yet Minguk cannot bring himself to eat. Relentless remorse over his selfish error weighs heavily upon him. Dawn urges him to release his regret and savor the food lovingly prepared for them. Minguk is baffled how his sibling, rarely successful in simple cooking, could serve a dish so inviting. Unveiling the truth, it was Jan Ho who bent over the stove. After the meal, Minguk discovers every favor originated with Rujim. It is Rujim's steady watch that causes Datin to feel beholden to him. Earlier that day, Rujim requested that Doten redeem his debt by discovering Unhai's whereabouts. As Datin considers this appeal, Minguk abruptly reaches his breaking point. He shouts at Doten, demanding to know why secrets persist and pressuring him to finally reveal the full truth about what befell their older brother Janal. Minguk insists on hearing everything and bluntly commands Doten to quit dodging with incomplete explanations. A faint, ironic grin plays on Doten's lips as he smoothly swerves the conversation, pointing out that at this rate, they'll end up being late for school. When they set off, Yunho glances backward, questioning if Datin intends to leave for work once they've departed. He reminds him to be cautious and keep a low profile until Rujim makes his return. Their current adversaries are far more dangerous than the threats of old. Meanwhile, Jun and his accomplices venture out on a covert assignment. At the same time, elsewhere in the city, the celebrated actor stares gloomily from the edge of a rumpled bed, scrolling through news blasts about his exposed romance with actress Harry. Believing his future in the industry is shattered, he glances at her when she wonders aloud if he's prepared. Since disaster has already struck, he figures there's no sense in retreating from whatever comes next. Under the cascade of water, N hears the door creak open and immediately stiffens. Thinking Harry is merely teasing, he's wholly unprepared as steel suddenly plunges into his back. Soon afterward, a henchman drags his weakened body out and delivers him to Jae-hyun. Jiun sharply warns the actor to remain silent unless he wants another injury. He then produces a mysterious humming instrument and demands to know what depraved things Nam dabbles in. Nam adamantly denies any association with that, but Jae-hyun ruthlessly cuts into his leg and orders him to cooperate with the charade. Once the compromising blackmail footage is finished, Jae-hyun instructs him to steer clear of the internet for 5 months. Furthermore, he demands that Nam reject the most significant acting role of his career, because it's already promised to someone else. Later, Jae-hyun's gang admires how he single-handedly eliminated the rival performers, clearing the way for Yun-woo to claim top spots. Yet a few question why he keeps targeting others even though Yun-woo is already unmatched. Hwan grins slyly, stating their leader wants the scheme to move forward only after Yun-woo's supremacy is uncontested. Abruptly, he becomes aware that one member is missing. The others inform him that someone has volunteered to accompany Yoonhee. With thin patience, the blonde guard urges her to hurry, but she remains transfixed, stunned by the revelation that a dead soul was indeed resurrected as a clone. She recalls Okian's words, such a revival spell needs to be cast mere moments after death. That chilling knowledge fills Yoonhee with dread. Could their intention be to imprison her until her end, only to then create a docile duplicate? Memories burn of the many times she lowered her gaze and submitted just for survival's uncertain promise. But now, an old boundary ruptures within. Without warning, she halts. The guard queries why she stopped. In that instant, her illusion fades and the genuine Yoonhee whirls, crashing her foot into his chest with force enough to knock him sprawling. She refuses to be extinguished as anyone's marionette, furiously smashing the cuffs gripped in her hands against his face multiple times. To conclude, she unleashes her most potent mirage, causing her adversary to collapse utterly unconscious. Gasping raggedly, she spies the dropped phone, willing her faltering limbs to type out a terse message just before she collapses from exhaustion. At that moment, June attacks her from behind, a grin playing on his lips as he delights in this spirited girl's defeat of one of his men. As Yoonhee crumples to the ground, she silently hopes her signal reaches its intended destination in time. Elsewhere, Tan glances at his phone. A mysterious new message from an unrecognized sender baffles him, just 2 cryptic words. Ye Yun-woo. Tan questions whether it's truly a message from Yanhai and if so, can't understand why it is so obscure. He hesitates over returning the call when, abruptly, his screen flashes. Cautiously, he answers, catching nothing but taunting laughter. Jun, mistaking the recipient for Ray Yugim, jeers at him, accusing him of cowering and hiding. Though Denam remains wordless, Jae-yun somehow intuits this isn't Ray Yugim. From the other side, still, he instructs him to seek him out in a week's time if Yoonhee's life is of any value to him. By the following day, Dan Sham is tirelessly piecing together the mystery of who Yeon-woo could be, yet everything remains an enigma, no matter how hard he contemplates. Frustrated and worn, he muses whether Yoonhee used the name Yeon-woo, sensing perhaps that's the individual holding her captive. Suddenly, he recalls the gruff timbre of Jiun's voice, and new suspicions arise in his mind. It seems an intricate thread intertwines all these events, urging him to cease dithering. He must approach Yun-woo to uncover the truth within all this. Right then, a headline snags his attention. Yun-woo has unexpectedly been cast as a leading actor, and the timing reeks of suspicion. Without hesitation, Dan heads for the now-abandoned Shielder Agency office. The role awarded to Yun-woo once belonged to Nam, a previous client who had relied on the agency for protection. Dan slips inside the CEO headquarters and comes to a halt among shelves brimming with documents. He's considering a starting point when a sudden flashbeam flares right into his eyes. Fortune favors him. It is an old companion, the most dutiful enforcer from his crew. Together, they begin sorting through the archives side by side. Tyne can't help but feel a surge of pride. His men respond to his call in his hour of need. The loyal tough confides that his reasons for being here are personal, though he's openly relieved to reunite with his old leader. In time, Tan discovers what he sought, Nam's confidential contact details. He arranges a meeting, but Nam adamantly refuses to share anything. Shaken, Nam cautions him that his attackers are dreadfully perilous. Dan adopts a subtle approach, persuading him that the CK Shielders would support Nam should anything go awry. Extending his business card, Dan barely sees Nam's hand twitch before memories overcome him. Nam sadly shakes his head. He cannot agree. Those fiends have already coerced him into recording an obscene video potent enough to ruin his entire future. Dan Hyen understands that familiar intimidation won't sway this young man, so he alters his strategy. Recalling there was an actress also embroiled in the scandal, he nonchalantly wonders aloud if she's alright. He anticipated some subtle giveaway, but merely mentioning Harry causes Nam to collapse emotionally. Days glide by and the final day of Jun's one-week ultimatum dawns. He taunts Yoonhye, questioning whether she honestly thought someone would bother rescuing someone as worthless as herself. With a sinister smile, he declares she will have the privilege of bidding farewell to their severed heads before he finishes with her. Such vile words only fuel her rage. Jun relishes the effect and comments on how much he enjoys the expression on her face, adding that it amazed him when half of the 4 men loyal to Ah turned traitor with so little effort. Suddenly, his phone buzzes. A subordinate calls with urgent news. Nam is now streaming live, claiming the lead once more, and this revelation catches fans completely off guard. Elsewhere, the boy in the pink hoodie is alarmed, realizing, just as Dan instructed, he broadcast his real whereabouts to all. Mam nervously inquires whether those monsters will truly hold back the tape as promised. Dan merely shrugs, remarking that this was the gamble he agreed to for the sake of his girlfriend. The only assurance Dan offers is his intent to make whoever orchestrated this pay dearly for their cruelty, haunted for the entirety of their existence. Elsewhere, Ji-yoon instructs his men to mobilize at once and locate that slippery little pest immediately. A henchman replies that their speediest operative is already in pursuit. When the pursuer finally intercepts the kid in the pink hoodie, he coolly inquires about the boy's intentions, but the supposed youngster responds with a deep timbre, confessing he's grown weary of waiting. It's not Nam at all, it's Dahan. The pursuer demands to know the stranger's real identity, but Dahan is already piecing together the links between Yongyu and these criminals. He quickly recognizes the man facing him as one of those employed in their grim dealings. Yuan's message bolsters his theory that this same organization is responsible for her abduction. Wasting no time, the thug snarls at Dahan to reveal Nam's whereabouts, even concluding the true actor must be observing them without showing himself. Through the phone, Nam clarifies that this one is but a minor underling. The authority holding his confession tape sits higher in the ranks. Therefore, Dohan requests a straight path to the leader himself. Unexpectedly, the man glides past and instructs Dohan to follow. Concealed around a corner, Nam watches in disbelief as the man seems to lose substance and materializes right behind them. Thankfully, Dehan intervenes at the critical moment, shielding Nam from abduction. With one powerful kick, he sends the fiend hurtling into the water. This opens up an escape for Nam, who slips away to conceal himself. Even from that single blow, Diane senses this adversary is anything but ordinary. Indeed, the lunatic emerges from the water in turmoil, infuriated that Diane managed to land such a strike. Meanwhile, Ray Yugim's mentor gives a sudden command for him to follow. With every step, the surroundings morph until he enters a landscape woven from the fabric of his own recollections. His teacher sets forth a solitary challenge: cross to the opposing edge of the valley. Ray Yugim wades through the shallow waters, feeling a peculiar sense of déjà vu. The familiar ambience and even the scents stir echoes from long ago. Suddenly, he notices a gathering of old companions and wonders aloud how they made their way here. Puzzled, they assure him that it's simply supper time after training. Ladies from his mistress's lineage arrive, bearing food for the fighters, prompting the crowd to eagerly flock to them. The scene brings a smile to his lips. For the first time in what feels like ages, he's overwhelmed with joy to see everyone safe and together. At last, the decisive blow lands upon his already weakening heart. His beloved appears and draws him into her arms, softly telling him it's time to go home. He collapses to his knees as his mentor knew he would. This ordeal proved to be the most challenging, and yet it brought clarity to his mind. He recognizes at last that holding on to bygone days was the very thing chaining him down all along. His teacher observes wordlessly, standing by to witness which path he will choose. With unwavering resolve, the aura cultivator releases everything precious to him, determined to seek a brighter tomorrow, one in which Aken is finally conquered. And speaking of Aken, the chief beckons Jai Hunan to supper. But when Jai Hun expresses gratitude for the food, Aken soberly inquires who gave him permission to dine. Jai Hun swiftly expresses remorse for his assumption, prompting Aken to chuckle and confess he was only teasing. Jai Hunyan reassures them the actor's predicament remains under control and offers assurance there's ample time before shooting commences. Still, Aken remains unsatisfied. Right then, his secretary interrupts and assures him one ga o da en a Cyrillic letter 45659 a contingency plan is ready should this unreliable fellow falter. Jai Hun grits his teeth after manager Shimjiang once again slanders him. Nevertheless, Aken insists Jai Hun resolve it with the hefty $50 billion budget allocated for the task. Gio departs to contact Yongsung, pressing for an explanation for the delays. Meanwhile, Yongsung has Dehan pinned to a post and grumbles about how everything was proceeding smoothly until this charming nuisance intervened. The moment Yongsung lets his guard drop, Diane lands a fierce, precise blow to his ribs, hurling him into the wall, but this behemoth hardly reacts. Through the phone, Jian impatiently commands him to quit wasting time and finish the job. Obliging, Yang pulls off his shirt, brandishing his tremendous limbs and the peculiar rings in his flesh. He announces, "It's time to battle in Aken's way." Dehan simply returns a perplexed stare, as though he's witnessing someone exerting effort to the point of absurdity. Without warning, Yongsung lunges, seizes Dehan by the face and grounds him with tremendous and frightening speed. The truth is straightforward. Yang Tsung's physique was engineered in a clandestine laboratory by dubious surgeons under their director's charge, to augment his body with devices enhancing control over joints and muscles. As a result, he wields intimidating strength, nearly 100-fold that of an ordinary man, and the implants, named servo joints, sound just as grand as they function. Yongsung is satisfied. The results exceed his expectations. That thunderous crash makes Nem anxious about whether Diane 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456 was destroyed beneath it. Still, let's be honest, Big Brother can't be dispatched so simply. Diane jabs at Yongsung for depending on machinery like a sorrowful automaton. The reality, though, is he survived only because he deployed the iron body discipline just in time. 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456. In truth, Diane Hen was hardly unprepared. Not long ago, hunting among papers for N's number, he discovered a secret safe behind the stacks. Inside was an ancient martial 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456 arts guide. Returning to the present, he hurls Yongsung into the air with shocking strength, divulging how he devoted 5 days mastering arts ahead of Yunhai's 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456 looming countdown. The bloody boar's fist is merely one of several forms in his new arsenal. 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456. Now we return to the young man at his second test beside his mentor. At his master's single touch, he's hurled into an endless sky. Turning 2 Ga O Da En E Cyrillic letter 456 about in awe, he sees an aisle segmented in 3 adjoining grounds, and his master remarks, "Here, the Kai chains unite the heavens and earth." In essence, this is a frigid domain where both Kai and martial prowess are subdued to near nothingness. Here, the march of time drags miserably slow, yet none of the fearsome creatures residing within it share that pace. Rugium's sole means of endurance is the blade bestowed upon him. The instant his fingers close around its hilt, frost creeps along his skin. His mentor observes, though his spirit stands ready, his physical form has not yet matured. A suffocating force crashes down immediately, turning each step forward into a grueling ordeal. The biting cold bludgeons at both his flesh and mind. But the lurking beasts remain unfazed, prompting his desperate charge. He aims to dispatch them all before succumbing himself. Meanwhile, alongside Diane, he's exchanging fierce exchanges with Yongsung, drawing on his entire arsenal of martial training just to keep pace. Eventually, Yang-sung recognizes that brute force won't clinch victory and instead turns to agility, but that tactic falters as well. Exasperated, Diane Han can bear no more and shouts at him to quit dragging things out. Energized by a fateful surge, Yang unleashes every maneuver he's mastered, desperate to uncover the technique that might end it. Only then does he realize D-Han's blows were never simply reckless haymakers. From the outset, the elder sibling had cleverly aimed for his knee joints. Amused by the clever strategy, Yang-sung flashes a grin. Feeling confident in his deductions, he arrogantly dares D-Han to land a final strike. Mustering the last shreds of his energy, D-Han focuses every fiber into his next blow. As he nears, Yang Seong proclaims checkmate and hurls D-Han's head toward the earth, or so he believes. As he wonders why D-Han didn't go for his knees again, he suddenly feels a hand seize his face from behind. In that brief moment, D-Han issues a warning. He's about to experience the move that shatters mountains. When the technique strikes, the force dents Yang Seong's skull, blood surging from his ears. Amazingly, even now, the giant remains upright, defiantly claiming he won't drop so easily, launching a last wild assault. But with equilibrium lost, he collapses then and there. D-Han reveals everything went according to plan. Dragging the dazed juggernaut, he plunges into the dark waters below. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Jian's associates start growing restless. By now, Yang Seong ought to have checked in. His speed, after all, is unmatched among them. A member cautions the group, hinting the boss will return in a foul temper, so everyone should remain vigilant. At that instant, the fair-haired man pauses, remarking he glimpsed something flicker outside, but he shrugs it off. Really, who would dare break into Yang Woo's private villa, the current hideout of Jian's organization? In the basement below, Yoonji turns to ice as someone's voice echoes faintly from beyond the door. Beyond, D-Han appears mere moments before the one-week time limit slips away, while in another realm our hero wages endless battle against waves of creatures. For every passing hour in that world, a whole year flies by on Earth. More than conscious intent, only primal survival drives Yugim as bones snap and sinew screams. Eons seem to pass until at last, he slays the final beast in sight, relying on his sword alone. Casting his eyes upward, he boldly announces readiness for another test. Yet as nothing transpires, he questions if something remains undone. Suddenly the terrain beneath his feet liquefies, sending him tumbling away from the airborne isle. He lands with brutal force on a new, mostly submerged island, immediately plunging underwater and fearing this trial may come stacked atop the previous one. Meanwhile, D-Han tears the cellar lock asunder with nothing but his own strength. He finds himself doubting if Yun is any concern to her captors, considering they abandoned her trussed up alone without even a solitary sentinel nearby. Then before his eyes, an impossibility unfolds. Yun quickly insists she hasn't been crying, though the sorrow painted on her face betrays her denial. Setting that aside, D-Han wastes no time and strives to lead her away. Both are utterly drained. Confronting Jun Xing's forces again would mean disaster. Just as they near freedom, Jun materializes from shadows, prompting D-Han to snap back and demand his identity. Yet before explanations surface, Yan unexpectedly interjects, offering devoted fealty to Jen Yun in exchange for D-Hen's life. Jen Yun, astonishingly quick to accept, commands D-Hen to go, granting his release. He keeps silent about the unit of augmented soldiers converging quietly from behind. D-Han flatly refuses to escape, preparing to defy fate one final time, but a vicious uppercut sends him skyward. Struggling back to his feet, D-Han hears Jen Yun order his subordinate to finish the deed once and for all. With ruthless intent, the blonde enforcer charges in, crowbar raised to smash D-Han's skull. At the last possible moment, Minguk and Junho burst dramatically through the wall, would-be saviors. Minguk hoists D-Han and admits they had been tracking him all along. Jae Yun's thugs rush the newcomers, angered by their intrusion, but one flick of the nerd's wrist sends them reeling. The man in the cap watches in bewilderment, stunned that such a youth possesses mastery over martial arts usually reserved for legends. He's oblivious. Ryu schooled Jun, who trained Yunho, preparing them for these crescendos with the Crimson Flash Fist. The first time Junho unleashed it, bringing down a wall, he'd been told its devastating force would only grow with perfect form. yet its toll is severe. It guzzles Kai and brings unbearable pain. When Junho inquired how often this could be used, the grim reply was twice, no more. Now that he's already employed it twice, fatigue overwhelms him, but no path remains but forward. Watching him assume his stance, Minguk's disbelief is palpable. Junho is truly going for it. As Junho aligns himself for his peerless strike, the cap-wearing thug braces for impact, only for Junho to discreetly draw pepper spray, blast his enemies, and dash for an escape with awe-inspiring, shameless swiftness. Jae-yun's posse cries out in distress while their boss silently views the retreat with profound disapproval, as Unhai and the others race for open air. Junho urgently implores everyone to press on and never glance back, but they're quickly overtaken. Jae-yun's men recover instantly, dragging them down. Fury engulfs the Cap guy at their humiliation while the rest prepare for vengeance. In a stunning reversal, John savagely kicks his own henchmen off the captives, the last image before everything blurs, a berserk boss hurtling at them. Having plowed through his own crew, John laments the squandered fortune invested in what he now calls worthless machinery. Since the costly devices are still retrievable, the unhinged one proclaims he'll destroy his followers himself, unable to forgive the chaos they unleashed upon his sanctuary. This pronouncement petrifies Minguk and Daehan, as Unhai senses the shadow of doom drawing ever closer. Hurling all his enhanced powers into action, John detonates a blast of violence so fierce it threatens to rip the structure apart. Yet the air remains unbroken, leaving the boss struck numb by disbelief. From the silence emerges a resonant voice bestowing accolades. That voice rings out and commends their endurance. The Emperor of Aura stands among them again, urging his companions to hold on to hope, for the conclusion is at hand.